Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you to the Ojai City Council and Ojai Redevelopment Agency Successor Agency regular meeting for January 12th, 2016. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Clapp?
Present.
Councilmember Haney?
Here.
Councilmember Lara?
Here.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Here.
Mayor Blatz?
Here. And if Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick could lead us in the pledge, please.
Everybody stand, please. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for being here. The first item on our agenda is our public comment section, and I want to explain the way we're going to be going through this. Originally, what I wanted to do is I wanted to limit the public comment to the first 30 minutes of our meeting, because what was happening is we had so many public speakers cards under public comment, and those are items that we can't even take up before the council tonight, that we weren't getting the business of the city done in the later agenda items. The second thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to give priority to citizens of Ojai to speak to us in the first 30 minutes, because I was going to allow everyone else to speak that didn't speak in the first half hour at the end of our meeting. Well, on advice of council, I've been told that we can't prioritize the city citizens over the non-city citizens, that everybody has the right to speak in the order in which they've presented the cards. Now, because our city clerk isn't here tonight, Amber has been taking the cards in, and I don't know if they're exactly in the order in which they've been presented for our public comment. I was also informed that we could limit public comment to just the first 30 minutes of our meeting if we so chose, and that there would be no public comment after the first 30 minutes, and it would be first come, first serve. I don't really think that benefits our city to do that, so I am going to limit it to the first 30 minutes of our meeting. I'm going to ask you to speak for 3 minutes at the most each. That only means we're going to get 10 people in, unless you can say what you want to say in a shorter period of time, which I think other people that might want to speak would appreciate that. And then we're going to put everybody else for public comment at the end of the meeting. So this is the time for public comment. Once again, the council cannot take any action on this. This is not an agendized item. It's a time when you can come and talk to us about anything that you want to talk to us about, but it's really not a time for you to come en masse to discuss an issue with us, because we really can't do anything about it. It's something to bring to us individually. It's something that we want to know about, obviously, if it's important enough for you to come to the meeting and talk to us. But this isn't the only vehicle that you can bring this information to us. We receive emails every day with people that want to talk to us about concerns. You can telephone us, you can email us, you can write us letters. So the public comment section of the meeting is not the only time that you can communicate with us. It's nice to have you here to communicate with us face to face, but it's not the only way you can. So I'm going to start off now to give you an idea tonight. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 cards. So if you're all really quick, we can probably get all 11 in the first half hour. So I'm going to really hold you to the 3 minutes or less. And if you're still in the middle of talking when 3 minutes is up, I'm going to have to stop you, because I'd like to get all 11 cards. I'm not going to expect one person to stick around to the end of the meeting to talk to us. So the first card is from Del Mo. Hi there. Come on up.
Good evening, Deborah Moe. I want to start out with saying Happy New Year to everybody, and I hope everybody had a nice vacation. I also want to commend you, Paul, on your last comments in the last meeting regarding getting stuff done that's on the agenda and not flip-flopping and going before stuff is done. I'm here to talk just briefly, and I'll only be just a minute or so, but I want to talk about, a while back, it was brought to the council that they're going to start enforcing the bike lane 3 feet, where you have to give 3 feet to bikes, something on that agenda. It's kind of hard to do in this valley. today I was going down Grand Avenue towards the East End, and there is a little tiny bike lane and stuff, but there's just not enough room for that 3 feet. I have gone all over this valley to try, and I really respect the bikers, most of them. Sometimes, I mean, you come up and I tap my horn, and I try not to lay on my horn. And sometimes they go single line, and sometimes they will tandem. So I think it's kind of a silly law. And other than that, I think the 3-minute deal is good. I think that if you're giving us 3 minutes, it's got to be 3 minutes. I think one of the worst examples of that was our past council member, Carol Smith, who talked about the vacation rentals and droned on for like 9 minutes, and Savaro did not put the gavel down. Anyway, not that I'm pointing the finger, but anyway, that's all I have to say, but I don't think it's fair to take away the 3 minutes, but put the hammer down. I mean, the rules are rules. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deborah. Tara Jeffrey? Anybody here? That's what it looks like to me. Yeah. Tara Jeffrey? No? Oh, okay. Oh, is she on her way? Well, we'll call her next. Stephen Weed? Stephen Weed? Hi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Hi. Hey, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
I came to speak about the forum that was put on last Saturday. That was the Planning Commission Forum, and there's probably a fancier title for it. So I actually attended, and I wasn't able to attend the first one, but I came away with 2 takeaways. First of all, there was, how many, Mr. Mayor, 50 people there, give or take? And William, you were there too, I noticed that. And, you know, that to me is resonant with the same type of participation and willingness to become involved that I saw in my Ojai Vision events. You know, people are interested in, you know, it's not only about small issues, but they're interested in the long term for this community. The second thing that I noted was I had an opportunity to talk with a facilitator who's the principal of the company and in fact engaged by the council. And you know, I came away impressed with what he was doing because he's dealing with the technical sides, all the different facets that it takes to make a plan. And again, I have no idea what the council has really contracted him to do, but he had mentioned that in some communities, his process takes you not only to looking at zoning issues, but also contributing and forming a revised general plan. In other words, it can serve as a vehicle, as a tool to not only provide a blueprint for future development, but also to address issues as they come up through this forum. And, you know, just speaking with him, he does seem like he has a vast experience in this area. And the takeaway that I came from that whole meeting was that the first meeting that he held was in May of last year. And so if you count, we're talking about 8 months until the second meeting occurs. And my concern is that if the time framework for this process remains that slow, it's going to be of little value. And so I would strongly encourage the council to, amidst all of your other priorities, to try and prioritize that work so that it happens sooner rather than later. The pace of change in Ojai has increased in the last couple of years, and the only way you can prepare for the future is to plan for it. This vehicle seems like it's a good vehicle for doing that. So I strongly support that, and I hope that you can give it as much attention as the time in the near future.
All right, thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Tara Jeffrey, are you here now? Okay, come on up.
I'm here, I'm gonna wait till agenda item 4, that was a mistake.
Oh, okay, so you want item 4? All right. Well, see, now we only have 10 speakers. Lynn Rollet. Is that from the prior meeting? Okay. Norm Plout. Hello, Chief.
Mr. Mayor, distinguished members of the council, Norm Plott, Division Chief for Ventura County Fire. I'd first like to say the new year brought us out of fire season, so that was a good thing. Second of all, I'd like to thank the council for your support of El Nino preparedness. Probably in the valley, we've had citizens fill or firefighters fill over 10,000 sandbags. We've actually moved our pile of sand to the front of the station so that residents have better access. So I'd like to thank the council for your support in getting preparedness. And I do believe during the recent rains that we had a lot less people, a lot less calls. We still had a lot of calls, but I think we would have had even more had people not been prepared. So I wanted to thank the council. And also I'd like to let you know that in Ventura County Fire Department, we have 115 engine companies. So that's a lot spread out through the whole county. And just wanted you to know, this year's Fire Company of the Year is the A Shift at Station 21 in Ojai. So,
All right.
Captain, yes. So I'll be bringing them to the council at a later date, but I just thought I'd share that bit of good news for 2016. Thank you.
Congratulations. Michael Shapiro.
Good evening. The City Council had honored the annual tradition of a rotating mayor coming from within its ranks for decades. It once had been the custom for the City Council to actually elect the mayor from within its own membership. But then the highly respected Councilman Jim Lobel and Jack Fay suggested, and they were supported by their colleagues, to have an annual rotating mayor from within its own council membership. In other words, they took politics completely out of the mix. But last year, that time-honored, successful, sensible, workable, collegial, congenial, and consensus-building tradition was violated by the City Council when they passed over Councilperson Bessie Clapp, who was next in line to be our mayor. Last year, Building Appeals Board Chairman Daddy initiated and managed the successful ballot initiative for a citywide direct election of mayor, serving 2 years. Regardless that the tradition of a rotating mayor from within the ranks of the City Council would now be forever altered by this direct election next November. After Mayor Lara served his full term as mayor instead of Betsy Clapp, the council nevertheless had one more opportunity for her to be mayor. But once again, the council turned its back on that time-honored tradition and passed her over, electing instead you, Mr. Mayor Blatz. Is this an example of a good old boys club engaging in denying the only woman her due? Or is it simply a pure act of brazen politics? The fact is, having an annual rotating mayor come from within the City Council had worked for decades because it avoided the politicizing of the office. Cindy Convery's Foothill Rock Wall absurdity, the hedge-cutting fiasco, the bowling alley raid, Brown Act violations, rubber stamping the irresponsible edicts of Bob Daddy's rogue Building Appeals Board, and God knows what else. Among many issues, rejecting Betsy Clapp's turn to rotate in as your mayor is one more example of a city council out of touch with the community that you're supposed to be serving, and seems to offer instead evidence that this city council is, frankly, has lost its way.
Thank you, Michael. I have a card from the Ojai Valley Green Coalition. Is Deborah here? Oh. Here she comes. All right. Yeah, speed it up.
I'm not going to keep my notes in my pocket anymore. Okay, so thank you, Mayor Blatz, council members. And I'm now feeling like I'm going to be speaking this evening and taking the risk of being tarred and feathered, but here we go. So usually we, the Green Coalition, come to the City Council to share about projects, upcoming events, or past event results. However, reflecting on a new year and past City Council meetings, the Coalition would like to share a broader observation. Government transparency and citizen participation is absolutely critical to a democratic society. At the state, federal, and global level, it is obviously extremely difficult to do this, but at the community level, we have the perfect opportunity to be truly of the people, by the people, and for the people. We would suggest this will not work if we approach our needs and rights with a you versus us mentality. Our relationship with those who represent us should be a two-way street, a dialogue, a collaboration. I would wager there's no one in front of us who has a personal grudge or vendetta toward a city resident or business, and you are here to truly do a good job to the best of your ability with the resources you have to work with. Honest misunderstandings, drop balls, bad policy, unjust laws can all be addressed if we come to the issue or situation table with civility. If we don't get on the same side, we're sunk. And to take that a step further, because we are the Ojai Valley Green Coalition, our concerns about our buildings, lot sizes, walls, hedges, and the like aren't going to mean squat if we don't have clean air, clean and sufficient quantities of water, and healthy topsoil. We get self-preservation as part of being human, but working toward the greater good of one's community is critical to our humanity. The Green Coalition is here to make a difference in the Ojai Valley at large because air, water, soil, trees, our night sky, and all our natural resources do not recognize our many jurisdictions. Sometimes it seems daunting even in our small valley, but we are often reminded of a special story which I have shared before. Thousands of starfish washed ashore. A little girl began throwing them in the water so they wouldn't die. "Don't bother, dear," her mother said. "It won't make a difference." The girl stopped for a moment and looked at the starfish in her hand. "It'll make a difference to this one." The Coalition wishes a healthy, safe, regenerative 2016 for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Cindy Convery?
In October, Councilman Haney made a motion to investigate the Building Appeals Board. When will that be addressed? Last September, I asked this council to tell me which of you directed staff to enforce the hedge cutting orders. I did not get an answer. In October, I emailed you again asking who directed staff to enforce the hedge cutting ordinance, and no answer. I came to both November council meetings to ask again, still no answer. Since this council refused to answer me, I investigated. I learned this. Councilman Wyrick, you directly ordered staff to enforce the hedge cutting ordinance. You identified properties to be targeted. Instead of having the courtesy to interact with residents, you ordered the troops to march against us in a surprise attack. Your complaints against Ojai residents and even some of your own close neighbors, and your direction to staff to enforce the hedge cutting ordinance cost this city thousands of dollars. 2 residents are now considering suing. You stated many times in this room that our laws are there to be enforced, and yet you just planted hedges along your front property line that are in violation of the current ordinance that you've been using as a weapon against us. Right now, you are in violation of the very ordinance you've been responsible for enforcing. So many residents spoke out at the November council meeting that this council implemented an emergency moratorium against the hedge ordinance, an action that completely ignored legal advice and put this council in violation of the law because you all ignored the simple Brown Act requirement to allow 24 hours for public notice, which resulted in a warning letter from the district attorney. The district attorney has never investigated the Ojai City Council until you were elected, Councilman Wyrick. In summary, Councilman Wyrick decided to enforce Ojai's hedge ordinance rather than examine the law to see if it really works for our town. He made, quote, anonymous, end quote, complaints against residents, even some of his own close neighbors. He cost the town thousands. This council was pushed into a corner and then violated the Brown Act, a misdemeanor, resulting in an order to correct from the district attorney. Ojai is a connected community based on courtesy and mutual respect. We don't do witch hunts here. Councilman Wyrick, you need to get on board with that. And never forget this. Ojai is a working democracy, and democracy always wins.
Thank you. Peter LaFollette? Peter?
Hi, Pete LaFault, 999 East Ojai Avenue. My comments here are not so much directed to the thoughtful members of the council as they are to the good people of Ojai. At the end of December, the Ojai Valley News had two headlines. One on absentee rentals, a ruling will remain the same. The other on affordable housing is nowhere to be found. If one is against affordable housing on a local level, then one is really against the workers that we see, the restaurant workers, the service workers, the store workers, the workers at the gas station. So that isn't such a thoughtful way to go about treating your neighbor. Rentals by people who choose not to live there, that affects the local economy, how they understand the value of a local economy and how they understand local control of a local economy, which we in Ojai feel is so important, and the results are obvious. There's a pattern everywhere in the state of the rich altering the landscape at which they live, and once that happens, you can never go back. Many of us feel and we see that this is a process of erosion that is happening in Ojai. So in the spirit of Ojai, I say no to the rentals and yes to more affordable housing.
Thank you, Peter. Dale Hansen?
Good evening. I'm Dale Hansen. I live in the city of Ojai. As you know, our county supervisors voted against the growing of medical marijuana in the unincorporated areas. And I would like to ask that the city of Ojai consider changing. I understand we have an ordinance against it too, but I'd like to request that we change that ordinance. There are so many people that need medical marijuana for their illnesses, to manage pain and nausea, and in some cases stop the spread of cancer. And I really, really hope that you'll put this on a future agenda for us to discuss it and rule on it. Medical marijuana is critical to us, and I don't know how it would be, if it would be open fields or hot houses or where they're covered or whatever, but please consider those that are affected by not being able to have access to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dale. I don't have any other speakers cards, but there is a couple minutes left if somebody wants to speak. No? Oh, come on up for it. Yeah, did great.
Should I hand this in still, or?
Sure. You can hand it, thank you.
Hi. Well, that clock starts right away. My name's Sam Gay, 501 East Aliso. Short thing, I'm a bartender. I pour up at the Ojai Valley Inn Spa, originally at Jimmy's Pub. Now I'm up at Olivella, and I'm kind of enjoying a bit of a vacation while the renovations are getting fixed up. I do also like to kind of tout that on a very small technical level, I am a small business owner as a founding member of the Ojai Spirits Cabinet. We're basically a loose collective of the bartenders in town. We talk shop, trade ideas, and try and get everyone making better drinks. So when I heard that the rentals and housing was being discussed today, I felt obliged to show up. It was mentioned already that, yes, the service industry is, people who work in our restaurants and kitchens and bars are all the ones who are often looking for affordable housing. And I'd like to kind of echo and reinforce that although we do like having, as bartenders in our restaurants and in the hospitality industry in general, we do like some tourists. They're nice. It's good, it's nice to have the influx of business and revenue. However, by having someone purchase a house and renovate it and look to renovate it and be renting as a vacation rental and to people looking to have a good weekend up here, it becomes incredibly more and more difficult to find housing for someone who's living on tips or $10 to $15 an hour if you're working in the kitchen, if you're working in a kitchen job. And I would like to just kind of to add on top of that, I've had a number of very good friends of mine, friends and coworkers, who they've already felt the pinch. I'm very fortunate that I'm unmarried, no kids, and my expenses are pretty easy like that. I'm also in relatively good health. I haven't had any medical bills or anything of the like. I've had at least 2 friends, close friends of mine, who have had to move out of their current homes because of just general expenses. At least one of those friends, their landlord was looking to increase their rent by about $400 a month, from $1,200 up to about $1,500 or $1,600, with medical issues on top of that. And the restaurant industry being as difficult as it is in any city, we don't really need the pinch. We could really look to some support from the general community and from the council members as well. So that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the next item on our agenda now. One of the things I noticed was missing from the agenda, Mr. Clark, was commission reports, and we do have some people here that wish to give a commission report. Should I bring that up now during public comment because it's non-agendized? Okay.
You could treat that as a variety of public comment from those commissioners.
Okay, that's what I'm going to do. I believe that the Arts Commission has a report.
Thank you, Mayor Blatz. I want to start off by recognizing that in the City Hall right now, in the corridors, what we call the gallery, is an exhibit of the student work by those students who were part of the Artist Student Mentor Program this past summer. A very successful program that we are initiating again this year. In fact, we're accelerating it and starting the process in January with applications from artists and then reaching out to the student community again. This program, of course, is supported by the council, and we appreciate that. Moving from that, I want to report that we are making progress on a new project, which is, we hope, the creation of a series of books that will recognize the depth and breadth and history of the arts in Ojai. And we're focusing on architecture to begin with, and several of our commission members have already done a great deal of work reaching out to virtually every architect in the community, getting their suggestions on which buildings deserve that sort of recognition, and we'll be moving forward with that project as we continue it throughout the year. The other thing I want to address, however, disturbs me considerably, and that is reading in the OVN the other day the report about commission members who had missed meetings. I'm disturbed by this because one of the commission members was from the Arts Commission. I was not contacted by whoever put together that report, and if that person had contacted me, I would have pointed out that Bobby Balderman, the commissioner in question, has indeed missed 4 meetings. One of those, I don't know the reason. It was very early in her service as a commission, within the first month or 2. The other 3 that she missed were because of illness, the first of which, she was so ill that when she came to a commission meeting, I said, "Bobby, go home." She looked on death's door. The next 2 that she missed because she was engaged in unexpected surgery for cancer. And so she missed 2 meetings because of this. Now, I don't know how the ordinance reads, but I would hope that regardless of how the ordinance reads, that in the future, the commission chair would be approached, consulted with, and certainly in an instance such as this, there would be some recognition that there was a reason for missing those meetings. I might point out that Bobby Balderman is leading the effort and has done a great deal of the work to move our architecture book forward. It's a great shame, I think, that she was essentially presented to the public as someone who was laggard in fulfilling her responsibilities, which is simply not the case. Thank you.
Thank you. And Christine Golden, did you have something? I'd appreciate, it's not going to, I can appreciate you wanting to show your support, but it doesn't have an influence on us, and if it doesn't influence us, then I'd appreciate you to hold it down.
Okay, I'm here really to give you some information about an item that's going to come up for discussion. It's item number 6 under discussion items, but Paul said that I could do this during commission reports, and that you would all remember what I'm going to say. So much to my chagrin, when I was having a cup of tea and reading the OVN last Friday, I saw a little blurb that said on the City Council's agenda was an item that said, a recommendation to approve a public art waiver to allow the applicant to pay the appropriate fee to the Public Art Fund in lieu of providing on-site public art. And so I immediately thought to myself, well, gee, what in the world is this all about? And why didn't it come before the very body that you have appointed and put into place to advise you on such a discussion that you would have at a meeting like this? Well, the reason I was given, I think, is just as disturbing as having read that in the paper and finding out about this request for a waiver in that way. And that is that the ordinance doesn't specifically say that this has to come before the Arts Commission. Well, I pulled the ordinance out, and this is what it does say. The very first paragraph, before anything else, Section 416.202. Program execution. The commission, now it doesn't say Arts Commission, but I'm assuming that our lawyer would agree that it meant Arts Commission, shall carry out the duties established by this chapter. So there's an umbrella statement at the very beginning of the ordinance, alerting all of you that you have an Arts Commission to advise you on these matters. Now, we don't even know, I learned today that this is the Ojai Valley Athletic Club, and they're asking for a waiver on their solar paneling that they have been putting in, and they've gone over the limit, and now they qualify. But why they want the waiver, how much money they would be giving to the Public Art Fund if you guys approve that, whether or not the commission thinks this is a good idea, haven't got a clue, can't tell you, just found out about it. Something's broken here. This is not right. I also want to say that in Section 416.206, and this is again because I was told, well, the ordinance doesn't say we have to come to you about this. It says, in authorizing such alternative compliance, the council shall make findings.
Please be quiet in the audience so we can give our attention to the speaker.
Thank you. Okay, so the city council may waive the strict compliance, this is B in that section. In authorizing such alternative compliance, the council shall make findings on the basis of substantial evidence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to see that the goals of the ordinance are being met, are being fulfilled. Where do you get that substantial evidence? Here we are, the Arts Commission. So please, when you get to that item, will you please just send it to us? The other thing that I heard today was, well, that's going to take more time. Well, if it had come to us in the first place, that wouldn't be the case. So now, yeah, you're right, it's going to take more time. And probably our feet will get held to the fire for that incorrectly. So.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Are there any other commissioners here wanting to give us a report? No? I'm going to bring it back to the council for council, anybody from the council members for their reports. Anybody want to, Councilman Lara, any report?
Yes. I do want to report that we did meet at the ad hoc Cultural Resource Committee yesterday, and we did talk about the PA. We talked about exemptions, so we will be bringing that forward to council soon. I think it was very productive. It was a frank discussion that we had with staff and the tribal group. I think we're getting some headway, but I think there's some policy making that we, the council, needs to clarify before it goes down for any type of modification. Second thing is, I do want to clarify the PAW. A lot of people are confusing the PAW with an extensive survey, or they're thinking that it's going to be a process where there's automatically going to be an archaeologist and a cultural monitor or CHUMAS monitor on site. The PAW is unique to Ojai. It's unique to Ojai because it is a way to find out if there's prehistoric or historic resources nearby. And we developed it, and it's unique to Ojai because we developed it in a way where it is affordable and it is quick compared to other avenues. So I just want to make sure that we clarify that up front. Now, there's recommendations that come out of a PAW, and those PAWs are those recommendations are a variety of recommendations, from a monitor to an extensive survey to no survey. So I just want to make sure that the public understands that. We are still working on it. We are still not done. It's a policy that we're trying to implement because we're trying to follow our general plan. And it's been in our general plan since the 80s. So we are trying to work out the kinks with staff and the tribal group. And we are getting some headway, but I know there's a lot of anxiety out there, especially within our contractors and homeowners that are trying to do work on their property. But we are trying to clarify it, and I want to make sure that the public doesn't confuse what the PAW is. So
Thank you. Councilman Haney, anything?
I sit on the Ventura County Animal Control Board, and we haven't had a meeting this year as of yet, and I've been a co-chair or a vice chair on a lot of committees, and I'm looking forward to changing that this year. Instead of being a vice, maybe actually get to go to a couple meetings and be more of a part of it. So.
Okay, great. Councilwoman Clapp?
Nothing to report, but I think it would be great for you to step up in the OBGMA, and I could go to an alternate or otherwise if you like, because I think that would be a great one for you with your interest in water.
Thank you, Betsy.
You're welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick.
Thursday, I attended a marijuana mapping conference called by the Ventura County Sheriff's Department and the, I believe it's Ventura County Health Unit. It was down in Oxnard. That was packed with representatives from all over the county. And a couple of things that I just wanted to bring up about that. It was, as already has been alluded to by Dale Hansen in public comment, there was emphasis again and again and again on the need for local jurisdictions to take action by March 1, 2016, in order to ensure that we maximize our local discretion and our local ability to manage our own fate with respect to marijuana in general and medical marijuana in particular. Supposedly there's going to be a move to extend this deadline, but I think it's extremely important that we take a measure or by urgency ordinance facing this deadline by March 1. I'm not asking that we do anything right now. This is just a council member report, but I just wanted to express my opinion about that, and I've expressed that opinion already to the city manager and to the city attorney, and I'm expressing it to everybody now. And one of the reasons I think this is very important is that when you look at this, and I'm going to focus here on medical marijuana in particular for just 30 seconds, that this is not a matter of just symptomatic treatment. And the other thing that I heard down at that conference was different opinions. You had the health people kind of acknowledging that there's legitimate medical purposes to medical marijuana, and frankly, some members of law enforcement that didn't seem to accept that. And that bothered me a little bit, and I just wanted to quote a couple of things. One is, for example, one research study showed specifically that cannabinoids prepared in certain ways, can also slow the neurodegenerative processes that ultimately lead to chronic disability and multiple sclerosis and other diseases. You have research study after research study talking about indicated benefits in terms of the use of cannabinoid preparations in cancer treatments. In other words, it's not just a matter of relieving symptoms, but the evidence is accumulating, and I think it's reached a critical mass that medical marijuana has important curative aspects to it. A lot to be done on this, but what I don't want is to have our citizens compromised unnecessarily. And I think we need to address this before the March 1 deadline so we can represent our citizens in terms of what they want to do in terms of medical marijuana. And also, we don't want to necessarily have state mandates allow a bunch of people running, raising marijuana in our small backyards with all kinds of negative effects. So there's just a lot of issues here that I think we need to address because of this mandate and not depend on the legislature, and I just wanted to make that one comment. Second comment I want to make very quickly. There's been a lot of, and I'm really kind of keying off your comment during the Planning Commission really quickly. We have a very heavily amended proposed historic preservation ordinance that's been posted on a website for the city. A lot of buzz that's created in the community. It hasn't been once to us yet for direction as to whether or not this council embraces that policy goals embedded in some of those recommendations. Keying off what you were saying, Mayor Blatz, I think there should be no further work on this until it comes to this council for deliberation in terms of setting the, whether, what the majority of us feel should be the policy goals pursued by that. Thank you.
Thank you. Keying off of Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick's comments about the medical marijuana, the issue of having to do something by March 1st is because the state has relaxed its regulations with regard to medical marijuana. And most of the cities, at least from the mayors that I've talked to, are scared to death that if they don't do something, they're going to be inundated with medical marijuana problems. I don't happen to look at it that way. I think that we have to acknowledge the fact that the state has liberalized its rules and for us to come up with rules that make sense to Ojai, not necessarily to protect ourselves against this perceived evil, but rather to tailor whatever it is that we really want medical marijuana to be in our community. So I think we do need to put it on because we do have, I believe we do have a March 1st kind of a mandate, don't we, Mr. Summers?
The mandate by March 1st is to have an ordinance or other rule in place regulating cultivation alone. The new laws that took effect January 1st create a comprehensive scheme to regulate medical marijuana that provides for local control over much more than cultivation. Only cultivation has that March 1st deadline.
Okay.
The rest of it does not. I'll also add that under that rule, under that legislation, if the city has either expressly or through the principle of permissive zoning an effective ban on cultivation, then it stands. Councilmember Wyrick's proposal is to do a belt and suspenders measure. We have permissive zoning in the city. What that means is that permissive zoning is when the zoning code says the following uses are allowed in those tables in sections 10 to 203, 204, 205, and 206. The tables that provide allowable uses by zone. Preceding those tables is a section that says the following uses only are allowed. If a use isn't listed, it's not allowed unless you secure a CUP and a determination of similar use. With that rule in place, the city at the moment has a ban on cultivation. The proposal, as I understand it from the council, would be to look at putting something explicit in place which could continue that present policy or else, as it seems to be the case, modify it. And that is, but it's only cultivation that has a March 1st deadline, not mobile dispensaries and the other broader rules.
All right, so is it your opinion that if we didn't do anything by March 1st, we still have a prohibition on cultivating?
That is how I read our code.
Okay. So it may not be as urgent as I anticipated, but it's something that I think as a community we have to decide if we really do want to prohibit the cultivation of it. And if we do, well then we don't really need to take any action perhaps except make it more expressive. But if we want to relax the cultivation, we need to do something, but we may not need to do that by March 1st.
It also is there's a risk assessment question in there.
Right.
There are some
There's other opinions.
There's
other opinions that there may be a risk.
The League of Cities and CSAC, the California State Association of Counties, have recommended that even if cities have permissive zoning,
right,
as a further measure, go ahead and do something specific.
All right.
Right.
Well, I think as a council, maybe we should give direction to staff to work with Mr. Summers, that if there's something that needs to come before us before March 1st of some sort of an urgency, that it come before us. If we don't have to worry about it, then I don't think we need to worry
No,
about it.
I just think we
Okay.
need to look at it.
Okay. All right, moving on to the consent calendar.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes.
I would like to pull 1C for discussion.
Okay, 1C is pulled from the consent calendar. Motion on the other
I move
matters?
to approve the minutes.
I second.
How about, did you say items 1A and 1B?
1A, 1B.
Okay, all right. And there's a second? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapp?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. Item C on the consent calendar is consideration of annual commissioner attendance report, removal of commissioners with excessive absences. Mr. Clark?
Thank you. This is the annual report that's prepared by the city clerk. And I would like to apologize for errors in that report, which were embarrassing for various members of the community. At any rate, the ruling, the way that this thing is decided is not based on the employee's handbook. It's based on the municipal code. And the municipal code grants the power to the council to decide when commissioners are appointed and when they're relieved from their duties, or to the mayor. So how you handle these absences is totally up to your discretion. I would say that because of the absence of the city clerk, we haven't had a chance to audit the report. And so I don't want, I'm concerned that there could be other mistakes that we haven't caught. And so I would like ultimately for us to have a chance to review the report and audit it.
Okay. If I could just make one comment. I think that maybe what we ought to do then is to continue this item. But along with this, I would like to see an agenda item kind of tandem to this on the selection and reappointment of commissioners. My feeling is that the way that we've been doing it in the past has been more of a rubber stamp than it necessarily needs to be. And I think that we need to bring it to the council for a vote on all of the applicants. And I'm working on putting together some sort of agenda item to that effect. And I'd like that to come before the council at the same time.
Mayor Blatz, I do have a comment on that. I do recall that a while ago we had a discussion about this commissioner's reappointment, and I think we decided that it wasn't going to be that process anymore. So if they were up for seat, they had to go through the whole interview process again, and it was up to the committee to either select the right choice at that time. So I don't know if it would benefit us to bring that when we've already developed the protocol that doesn't rubber stamp just their reappointment.
I probably used the term rubber stamp wrong. And I presume I can speak briefly on it because there is something here has to do with removal of commissioners. My thought is to put together a process where rather than the committee coming up with a recommendation and then the council voting on that recommendation, an interview process would take place in which maybe everybody could interview the applicants individually perhaps, or at least in a forum that won't violate the Brown Act. But then when it comes to reappointment or appointment of new commissioners, for it to actually come with a ballot before the council in which each nomination for either a reappointment or a new position would actually be by ballot of by secret ballot of the council. And that's what I'm working on with Mr. Clark. It's just my idea. It may not go, yes.
I was just going to add one little note. Secret ballot is illegal, period.
Well, not secret ballot, by ballot.
Yeah, by ballot, and it could be, for example, by written ballot with the commission seats and the applicants all filled out by the council at the
Yes.
meeting, passed to the clerk. The clerk would read off the ballots,
Yes.
name by name, but unfortunately, secret ballots are strictly
I
illegal.
misspoke. I didn't mean secret ballot, but by ballot of the entire council. And it's a thought. It's something that I want to have come before this body for deliberation, and if you agree, you agree. If you don't, you don't. But I think if we can get it together with this, I would like to have it come before us. Now, we don't have any commissioners coming up, I don't believe, until May, perhaps. May 31st. And I'm not sure if we have any openings that we're interviewing for now. But I think we need to do this definitely before May. Yes.
There are 2 open seats on the Historic Preservation Commission at the
yes.
moment,
Okay.
as Commissioners Boggs and Bisaccia have submitted their resignations.
Okay. Well, I think until this body takes a new approach, we have to do it the way we've been doing it. But I would like this new thought process that I have coming before the council for discussion.
Mayor Platt?
Yes.
One quick comment. I also would request that, I think as it was suggested by the commission chairs, that they be consulted as part of the auditing process for the updating of this report. And then in that way, that provides a way of informing us of extenuating circumstances that we should be aware of. I think that's important. And yes, we have 2 vacancies now, and I believe we have a number of terms that are up in May of 16. And I just wanted to read something from the protocol. It's always kind of useful to reread documents. On page 9 of the City Council protocol, it says, commissioners whose terms have expired will receive notification from the City Clerk Department. If the commissioners wish to be reappointed, the City Clerk Department shall have them confirm this request in writing. I mean, it's just part of the process that we ought to be more systematic about. So I support what you're talking about.
Any other comments on this particular item on the consent calendar? All right. Then I think do we need a motion to continue it?
I'll move receive to report.
Okay, is that it, right?
To move to receive the report?
Yeah, I
or
believe
to
that's the
table it?
action, right?
I think you could receive the report. You could also continue it to receive it again, perhaps the audited version.
Okay.
Okay, so let's, I'll move that we receive the draft report and continue the item for to receive the audited report.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapp?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. All right, moving on to the exciting part of our agenda now, the public hearings. Item number 2 is a request to approve miscellaneous permit, miscellaneous 15-13 historic landmark designation for Aliso Street Adobe located at 307 to 307A East Aliso Street, and a request to enter into the Historic Mills Act agreement with the city. Mr. Clark?
Thank you. Ms. Wold will be making this report.
Ms. Wald?
Good evening. Sorry, I'm just getting myself situated here. So before you tonight is a public hearing request to approve a miscellaneous permit, 15-13, to make 307 and 307A East Aliso a historic landmark for the city of Ojai, and to approve a request to enter into a historic Mills Act agreement with the city and the Quinns, the owner of 307 and 307A East Aliso Street. And I think you have a lot of ancillary or attachments to this report, but at this point, I think it's rather straightforward. What we're going to ask you to do tonight is review the proposal, conduct a public hearing, and receive the information that HPC has reviewed on this. And I will say that this particular request has come approximately 3 times to the Historic Preservation Commission, and in the staff report it explains that part of the problem or the issue in making this a little bit more detailed was the city refining our forms and the methods by which we request documentation of the character-defining elements of a landmark to avoid confusion when we go years down the road, 10, 20 years, what exactly was landmarked and what requires a work permit. So with that, I think that we've come with a lot of diligent work with the, HPC and with the Quinns, actually, with their assistance, to a very distinct group of character-defining elements for this property, and the criterion by which we feel that this project should be landmarked, and also with a very detailed Mills Act agreement, including a new thing that you will see now with the Mills Act, which is updating the 10-year plan. Keeping the monies that the relief they receive from the property tax from the Mills Act, keeping that being used for the property updates in a 10-year plan. So not just in the past, it's always just been 10 years. Now we have it renewing with every 10 years. So with that, I think everything's pretty straightforward. I will tell you that the Mills Act contract that you had an addendum to your packet, and I apologize for that. There was just a couple of little errors. The one that we had in the packet that came from the HPC was without the errors, so that was very clear that of how it was supposed to go. But I will just say that I did provide you with a red line version of it. It was just, and I can go over that if you'd like, but it was available to the public as attachment E was correct. So with that, I'm open to any questions you might have regarding this process.
Does anybody have any questions?
Really quick,
Uh-huh.
on the handout, Exhibit 1, page 3 of 9, I assume we're not defying physics with hardwood flowing, it's hardwood flooring?
Give me which, is there a typo someplace?
Yeah, page 3 of 9 in the red line, under 4, it says hardwood flowing. I assume that is supposed to be hardwood flooring?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that actually was, I just highlighted that. That was actually removed.
Okay.
So I just want, so.
That has been removed.
That was just highlighted, but it was, if you see the memo I wrote, that was actually removed. So
Okay,
even the
so that's
typo-
not in the.
No.
Okay.
So my apologies if there was
Well,
a
I'm
typo.
sorry, I just saw it, it just
Mhm.
leapt out at me.
Okay.
Any other questions of
So all the
staff?
red lines are deleted.
Councilman Haney?
Let me just clarify. So the three errors that were on that particular, that was at attachment C, I believe it was, were that we still had the property owner's address as 307 and 307 East Aliso, that they do own that property, that's not where they live, it's on a foothill. There was on, item 4 was the removal of those interior characteristics as they were not landmarked. Only exterior were, so that was the removal of that. And number 5 had the addition of the 10-year contract. So there was one correction, one addition, and one deletion.
Got it? Any more comments? All right. Councilman Haney.
Kathleen, just so I just understand this process better, it says here that intermediate budget for improvements of $20,000 with an ongoing budget of $3,000 annually to be completed as part of this act, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How do we verify that? How do we verify that they're spending the $3,000? Do they submit a business plan, or do they submit a annual report to Historic Preservation? And does anyone from Historic Preservation go out and address the site?
Well, okay, so in past practice, there has never been any follow-up with the 10-year plans. That's something we're working towards making more precise and more accurate, you know. So it's one of our processes, as we talked about earlier this evening. So right now, that is what we're hoping with one, with the changes that we talked about before in the HPC ordinances being updated, and 2, with these 10-year plans, so we're going to have some follow-through with that. So that is something that we're still working out with the city attorney, how that kind of works in the ordinance. But so, before I lose my train of thought, so the HPC commission would not be going out there, that's staff's responsibility. Staff would then, you know, what would happen is if they were in violation of their 10-year plan, there are then, I believe, and correct me, Matt, if I'm wrong on this, there would be policies within the Mills Act that would allow us to then revoke the Mills Act, or do like I would assume. The first thing probably would be, you know, we would reach out to them and tell them to bring themselves into compliance. The second thing may say, well, we're going to do a non-renewal, you know, of the contract. And so it behooves the property to keep this 10-year plan going and them documenting it to us because, you know, obviously they get a benefit from being in the Mills Act. So that's kind of how it would work.
There's also, if you'll, in the agreement, look at Section 9, which provides for enforcement of the agreement, and this exists in addition to a couple of enforcement tools created in state law. If in the course of assessing compliance we find out that in fact they haven't spent any money as they promised to do, then there's some tools for the city to use to enforce the agreement with, of course, appropriate verification and notice to the applicant, in addition to the non-renewal at the end of the 10-year program. So there's some tools in place that we can take advantage of that I understand hasn't really been on the to-do list previously, that is now on the to-do list.
Okay. Any other questions of the council?
Yes, Mayor Blatz, I do
Yes.
have a question. I'm looking at the exterior objects recorded from the report, and there's, to me, some language in there to specific objects. I'm particularly looking on page, attachment A, page 11 of 14, page 12 of 14. I believe there is one more, but I'm going to focus on these two. It says, where it says significance, the river of life, front doors are thought to be thought. It's not, it's to me, that's really an opinion. The next one says, when it talks about the front screen doors, says appear to be original. So if we were to accept this Mills Act, and in the future they wanted to change these, could they argue that they weren't verified as they weren't clearly defined or found that these were actually the front screen doors, or they weren't the river of life? So could they argue and modify this, or just because, or by us giving them the Mills Act, they're not allowed to argue? I'm thinking about the Neff Lounge, and there was a lot of ambiguity, so I don't want there to be the same issue in the future.
So this wording, the wording is from their historian. That's not our wording. It's not staff saying we think. That's their historian saying or thought to be. They are significant in the Historic Preservation Commission, and the applicants have agreed on all this. There's consensus on this at this point, and pretty well documented. That they are there's as much documentation as there is available that these are original to, or at some point, even with historic, you can have, things that are more current still become part of what you're landmarking, depending on what standards you're using, and whether you're. Well, I don't want to get too much off topic here. So yes, I think that the thought was to document them. I don't believe that they could argue that they. You want to say something? Go ahead.
I think I can speak to that question. The exterior object records are prepared by the historian who prepared the historic resource report. They're his professional opinion. So it does say they are words of opinion, but they're the historian's professional opinion. Through approving, this council approving, if it so does, and the applicant signing the Mills Act agreement, they have accepted that opinion that these are indeed the objects as described. Based on that, the city would be able to enforce against them a later claim that they're not historic, because they would have accepted that opinion of the historian through the course of approving and signing this agreement.
Okay.
And I will only add to, and I hope that everybody understands this format that comes off the California historic, webpage. We are using this and each object is photographed as close as we can get. Instead of it being sort of how the Neff was, just kind of a back, far away, just a general. That's the whole point of doing these, is to make it very specific with a brief description. So each item that can't be touched is really documented well. We hope that maybe you find this a little bit more, clear for everybody than just a narrative. That's the whole point of having the photographic record, as well as a narrative.
Any other questions of staff? No? I'm going to open up the public hearing then. I only have one speaker's card. Brian Akins.
My name is Brian Akins. I'm a commissioner on the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm a Ojai Valley resident, and I stand here in support of the application of Bob and Thais Quinn. As it says, they met with us several times. We went through the different questions. We're totally mindful of the ambiguity with the Neff Lounge and working to lessen that ambiguity. We're grateful to the Quinns for, again, they're coming to meeting with us 3 times. On 2 different occasions, they set up tours for the commission members to come out and to tour the property. So we discussed the property prior to that tour, as well as discussing the property after that tour. So again, thank you to staff for all of the work on this and providing information for us to make that decision. But it was our vote at that time to allow this landmarking to go forward. The Mills Act was not a part of it, I don't believe, as I think that came in later after our meeting. And so, again, for the landmark, I support that as a commissioner. So thank you for that. Second of all, I would like to thank City Manager Rob Clark, who Friday morning took my phone call upon reading the Ojai Valley News and sent corrective information to the City Council members, noting that I hadn't been absent 3 times and hadn't been absent 3 in a row. So again, I would like to echo Michael Addison's remark that it would be nice to check with the commission chair, which wasn't done. And I suggested to the Ojai Valley News that before they put a person's name being disparaged on the front page of the Ojai Valley News, that they might want to verify that information with the person that's being disparaged, because their delivery to my location in Oakview sometimes gets there about 10:30 in the morning. So again, thank you, and again, my recommendation to support this application.
Thank you, Brian, and I, on behalf of the council, want to apologize for that as well. Ultimately, the responsibility for things like that lies with us, and I apologize.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
I just wanted to really congratulate the Historic Commission, working with staff. This is a great improvement and a lot of learning from experience, and a really good precedent for moving forward on landmarking contracts. So thank you very much.
Thank you on behalf of our commission.
All right, thank
Mayor
you.
Blatz, I
Yes.
just want to also note the fact that you put so much thought. I read it through the minutes, and you looking at every single detail and what it meant. I really do commend you guys for that too, because it was really thought out discussions about what should we landmark and what this means. Everything from features to the work permits, and you could tell by the minutes. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank
Lara.
you.
Thank you.
I don't have any other speakers card on this item. Does anyone in the audience want to speak? No? Oh, okay. Come forward.
And I will apologize, I didn't fill out a speaker's card because I'm the applicant and I didn't know that I needed to, so I apologize.
Oh, okay.
So I'm Thais Quinn, I live at 701 Foothill Road in Ojai. And I also want to thank the commission and Kathleen, and we did beat our heads against the wall a lot for many months, and now I'm here before you. I want to say that what attracted me to Ojai, I've only been here almost 7 years, in the first place was the fact that we do have history here. And it's been preserved, and people are continuing to want to preserve it. And I live in a landmark house. I live in landmark number 16. And I saw that house in a magazine that fell open in front of me while I lived in Bakersfield. And I said, I'm moving to Ojai, which I did. And I always said about this duplex on Aliso, if that ever comes for sale, I'm going to buy it because it is in disrepair. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be something the city will be proud of. So I want to thank you in advance if you see fit to approve it. And if you have any questions of me, I'm here. Thank you.
Any questions of the applicant? No? I just want to say that I walked by that location the other day, and I happened to really notice it. I've noticed it for a long time, but I've really noticed it recently since you've done a lot of work to it.
We have.
And it really is it's beautiful at this point. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's really made a big difference.
Thank you.
Anyone else wanting to speak? All right, I'll close the public session, and I will bring it back to council. Any further comments by council?
If there's no further comments, then I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the categorical exemption pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, and adopt a resolution approving designation of Aliso Street, Adobe 307-307A Aliso Street as the City of Ojai Historic Landmark Number 22 based on the character of defining elements as noted in the resolution, and to adopt a resolution approving the historical landmark property agreement between the City of Ojai and Robert and Tise Quinn. Apologize for that. City of Ojai Historic Landmark Number 22 located at 307-307A East Aliso Street, incorporating a 10-year plan for maintenance of the landmark.
All right.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapp?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. All right, moving on to item number 3 on our agenda, the Libby Bowl project, budget Fees and policies. Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. We're following a two-track course with Libby Bowl. The Libby Bowl Ad Hoc Committee is working with a fairly large group of residents on how the bowl's going to be managed and operated in the 2017 season and thereafter. But for the 2016 season, in order to accept applications that are coming in and let people schedule their programs, we need to have policies in place whereby the city can run it. And we're proposing essentially the same policies that have been in place for the last 4 years under the Libby Bowl Foundation. Since there are fees involved, this needs to be a public hearing. And I just wanted to point out that we had made a correction on the fees. So the application fee for a nonprofit is $100. The use fee is $600 per day. And the damage deposit's also $600 per day. The facility fee is $3, not $2. And that's what the foundation had been charging, but we had been getting $2 of it. For commercial, it's $500 application, $1,500 daily user fee, and $1,200 damage deposit, and $3 per ticket facility fee. The facility fee does not apply to nonprofit events that have a ticket price less than $15. So our recommendation is that you conduct a public hearing on the fees, that you authorize the city manager to use the balance of the contingency that we created for the Libby Bowl to operate the bowl during this season, 2016, that you adopt the resolution setting the fees, and you adopt the resolution setting the policies, which again are mirrored after those that the foundation had.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any questions of staff by the council?
Mayor,
Yes.
I have a quick question about the fees. So does that change our revenue that's projected, or no?
No.
Just because it's
We use those fees to project the revenue.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? All right, this is a public hearing. I'm going to open it up to the public, and I have one speaker's card. Bill Miley.
Doesn't start until you get to
Good evening, Bill.
Bill Miley at 919 North Signal Street. There seems to be an issue, which I haven't read about, which may directly relate to the development of a financial management plan for Libby Bowl. Some nonprofit groups and community groups organized for cultural purposes have and are having difficulty being able to afford the use of the new Libby Bowl. Specifically, not being able to afford the use of a Libby Bowl. One of my newer friends was an active and key member of the Shakespeare group, now dissolved. They found several years ago that the new costs of using Libby Bowl went way beyond the money they raised or they earned when they presented the Shakespeare Festival. High prices cost them their venue and directly related to their dissolution. Other groups have disappeared possibly due to the cost of the Libby Bowl. Illusions Theater, Ojai Civic Opera, and Peachtree Theater. Please consider that when you're putting these prices together, which may only be other groups outside of the city who will be able to pay, and our own cultural environment will be wasted away. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. That was the only speaker's card I had. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Come on forward. Good evening.
Hi, Alan Thornhill, Ventura Street, Ojai. I didn't mean to speak on this tonight, but since you asked. The Libby Bowl is obviously a real jewel in our town. We love it. There's been some incredible things that have happened in the bowl. An Ojai night just in itself, you know, besides the fact of sitting in Libby Bowl with the lights and the sound of, and, you know, your neighbors, the storytelling festival, Illusions Theater, which used to happen, the music festival, and all the things that we've had over the years in the bowl that are fitting to the bowl, and that are fitting to the town, and that are fitting to the spirit of why we live in this town. It seems that the biggest issue right now, and I know it's real, is a financial issue. And so the last month when I came to the meeting and there was talk going on, it seemed like there was a real hurry to give the bowl away to somebody who, I guarantee you, I'll keep it packed for you 17 nights a month. You know, I do this, and I know they would, and that would be fine, and there would probably be enough money made to not have to worry about it anymore. But I wonder if maybe the money issue should be the bottom line of our consideration of what the bowl means to the town, to the point of, like the last fellow was saying, that a lot of the Storytellers Festival is gone because it couldn't afford it. And that was one of the, I don't know if you ever went to the Storytelling Festival, it was world class. It was just amazing. You don't see stuff like that every day. And anyway, I think we ought to pull together as a community, and I think there are enough people that feel strongly enough in this valley about the bowl and all the things that we love that we could put our heads together, and maybe the city or the community take care of the bowl. I understand that it costs $80,000 a year to maintain the bowl, and I'm sure that that a lot of that is maintenance and so on and so forth, and a lot of things that I don't know about. But I think that we could do that if we really put our minds to it and got creative about it, and maybe not be so hasty to give it away to somebody who is guaranteeing that they'll keep the thing packed more nights a week than I wonder if would really be in the best interest of our town. And, you know, just considering we don't have the parking for it, we don't even have the restrooms at the bowl for it. And there's a serenity here in the valley that I think is worth hanging on to and protecting. And we can always drive down and hear whoever we want to at the Canyon Club, or if that's what you want, but that's not necessarily what Libby Bowl is about.
Alan, I want to point out that we're going to have a community workshop on the Libby Bowl on the 19th? Next Tuesday?
Yeah.
The 19th.
The 19th, and I would welcome you to attend.
Yeah, I saw
The
that.
committee has met twice. There's a new Libby Bowl committee, and the things that you're talking about are exactly the topics that we are discussing.
All right.
And we're looking for broad-based community input on those topics.
Yeah,
So
good.
if you can,
Thank
if
you.
there's any way you can be there, please be there.
Yeah, I will.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this subject? No, then I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to, oh, sure.
It's Jeff Wells, excuse me, Jeff Wells, and I live in the city, and I'm sorry, I was out there in the overflow area. Excuse me. I just wanted to correct Alan. It's not 17 venues or events per month. It's 17 events that was being proposed. I don't know where Alan is.
Yeah.
17 events throughout the year, which is, I don't know, I think it was like 6%. So the person who was looking at it, and it wasn't a person who we were going to give it away to, it was a person who was looking to contract out for 17 days out of the year, out of the calendar year. So I think it's really important. You know, there's been a lot of misunderstanding, and hopefully if people come out on the 19th, hopefully we can get some clarification as to, you know, the facts, you know, as far as what's going on. And I know that there's storytelling. I'm really disappointed that storytelling, and who I sponsored as well, I know that they, you know, aren't going to be using it, you know, because they couldn't afford, but not necessarily afford the bowl, but, you know, there was other expenses associated with putting on that festival. So I just want to make sure that the public really understands, you know, what's going on versus some of the, you know, misunderstanding that's floating around. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else wanting to speak? No? All right, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for comment.
I'll start out.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick.
Number one, I I've already registered a concern about the publicity for this town hall event. It's not that far away. I don't think we've done anything in the Ojai Valley News yet. I could be correct if I'm wrong. I think, again, I'm not, I don't want to get too picky, but I just think it's important that everybody understand that this is an important town hall, and that we really get a commitment from the administration to really, the city manager's office to really step up the publicity between now and then. I think it's very important. On the website, Ojai Valley News, whatever,
We are doing all those things. I appreciate the suggestions.
Okay. The next thing I want to point out is that I'm a little concerned about whether we're adopting policies that may in fact that we may want to change quickly after we have that town hall, after we hear back from the focus group results. I don't want to lock us into a vision before we define a vision by de facto. I think I'm concerned about that. There are issues, for example, in what we require for security that end up being the difference between financial viability and not financial viability, completely outside the fees, and something that's simply the limit is stated as totally discretionary. Insurance as well. And another point I wanted to make is that I'm concerned. We have a pretty good position here for part-time manager, and I think it's important that the part-time manager position be advertised and we take applicants for that position, and that it not be simply just somebody that's in mind take that position. I think it ought to be opened up for people to apply to it. So I guess I'm not really sure how I get to a conclusion here, but I don't want to take action that's preemptive of what might come out of this town hall and the community interest in this asset, this community, cultural, fantastic asset for the community. And I very, very much want to see this be an open application process for this part-time manager.
So just in response to the first issue, we have people who want to book the facility now and need to lock in their dates and so forth, so we have to have some structure for doing it. So we're not in any way implying that this is precedent setting or that it can't be changed tomorrow, well, not tomorrow, but next council meeting. But we just have to have something in place that sets the rules so that we can take those reservations and lock in those dates. So I hope that's helpful.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes, Councilman Lara.
Just to echo Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick's first comments, first concerns, I also have that concern of just accepting something from a previous organizations without really thinking about it. I think we're making it onerous for nonprofits, for example, to come in and select a date. And he mentioned security, mentioned other things. For example, Sound and Lighting Company on page 4 of 9. It says user is responsible for all costs associated with sound and lighting companies or companies. A licensed and insurance professional sound and lighting company must provide all sounds. It says must provide all sounds and lighting. To me, that really adds a different element of hardship to nonprofits. And so if we're kind of leaving this as a kind of lenient process, that to me does not sound lenient. That to me sounds very difficult to meet the standards.
So most nonprofit groups don't bring in sound. This is for someone who brings in a sound vendor. Like when you have a big show, you need to have special lighting and special sound, and this is for that situation.
So
you don't have, it's not mandatory.
Not even microphone, or if they wanted to speak just to the audience around the seating area. To me, that just seems very onerous. It seems more of a hardship. So I do have concerns that we are just rushing and wanting to implement a policy that I think adds more of a hardship to our community and to our users, quite frankly.
Other comments?
Mayor, I have one
Yeah.
thing to say. You know, when I sat on the Recreation and Parks Commission, we had a number of people come to us and ask for the fee to be waived. So for any nonprofit that's out there and for any individual that'd like to use the bowl, the old process was going to the Recreation and Parks Department, but I'm sure you could come right here to City Council and ask for the same waiver. So I don't think the fees should be an hindrance when, if you can demonstrate that you are in need and that you're a viable entity that the patrons of our community would like to see. So I'd like to put that out there.
I agree with Councilman Haney's comment. And the situation that we're faced with is that we're not going to be able to have what would be considered to be a commercial season in 2016. It's just too late for that. And we as a committee and the community through the workshop process have to come up with really how we want to look at this forward, but really not starting until the 2017 season. So we have to have some structure in place for this year, but it's not going to be what it's going to be next year, probably. But we don't know what that structure is going to be next year yet. So I don't have a problem putting this structure into place. I agree with two things that I've heard, though. I think if we're going to have some sort of a facilities manager, it ought to be opened up and interviews ought to take place. And I also think that there ought to be a provision that anybody that wants to use the bowl has a vehicle to come and ask for a waiver of the fees. I don't think that that should be the rule over the exception, but I do think there ought to be a vehicle for somebody to come. And if the council wishes to waive the fees, I think is a community benefit, we ought to have the ability to do that. So I think that ought to be part of the, whatever motion is made.
May I add to that, not just a waiver of fees, but maybe a waiver of specific conditions in the agreement, specific requirements as well.
Yeah, I agree. Any other comments?
Well, I can support that.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion?
I just have a clarity question also. This whole independent contractors I've heard when we first brought up the Libby Bowl issue is that in that contract, when it's signed with an independent contractor, it stipulates that they're allowed to present their activity in any city-owned park. Does that include the Libby Bowl? And if it does, how is that process worked out? Is it worked out through the Parks and Recreation Department?
So I think you're talking about independent contractors that put on recreation programs for the city recreation department.
Yes, for the.
Okay, so yes, they reserve the bowl through the recreation department.
Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion if somebody wants to make it.
I'll take a stab at it. Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation subject to the following amendments. Number one, that the position of part-time manager be advertised for applications and interviews conducted. Number two, that specific requirements for fees and our other requirements may be waived by council approval by application without application fee.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapp?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. All right. Moving on to our discussion items, and I think that what the majority of us are here for tonight. So let's have some fun. Short-term vacation rental policies and enforcement. Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. At the December 6th meeting, the council considered the report of the Ad hoc Committee on Transient Rentals, and you gave direction to the city attorney to prepare certain types of ordinances which contain a shell within you can create regulations for transient rentals. And so he's prepared those ordinances. You also asked that he prepare resolutions that allow for subpoena of private information relating to those who, to the operators of the online services. So I think the best way to start would be to have the city attorney walk you through the resolutions and the ordinance so that you and the community can try and understand the framework and then go on to the details.
Okay, Mr. Summers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Clark. What's before you are 5 documents that I've drafted, plus a staff report, and I'll walk through them in order. The key to keep in mind with all of these is that these are drafts for discussion by you tonight, adoption at will. The ordinance cannot be adopted tonight. Rather, you would direct staff to process it through the Planning Commission, then to come back to the council. It has to go to the Planning Commission because it's structured as a zoning ordinance, and any amendment to the zoning ordinance under state law must be reviewed and commented upon by the Planning Commission. In particular, the Planning Commission's role is to comment on the consistency with the general plan of any proposed zoning ordinance. Turning to what's before you, the first item is attachment A, and it's a relatively short resolution that is intended to serve as a stopgap measure. It creates a registration requirement for all existing transient rentals and provides that if they register, then upon the lifting of the current suspension enforcement, which the council ordered at its last meeting on February 1st, the city will not enforce the current ban on transient rentals, except for the one that has a permit, against those that have registered until the earlier of one of 3 events. 1, they receive approval or denial of a transient rental license if the council acts to create a licensure rule, or 2, 30 days after the effective date of an ordinance regulating transit rentals, or 3, if the council decides not to adopt an ordinance regulating transit rentals, then after the council so decides. And I would ask if that was the case, that the council make an affirmative declaration, we are not going to adopt an ordinance regulating transit rentals, rather we're going to maintain the current ban. And I would suggest at that point that we adopt a direct ban. So the registration requirement would allow a stopgap measure until one of those 3 dates happens. It would provide that the registration is merely securing a seat to be able to apply for a license. It does not guarantee a license. It does not promise a license. It promises that you'll be able to apply, and if you register, you're not guaranteed at all receiving a license. The license application would be evaluated depending on whatever rules the council selects for licenses, if it goes the licensure route. And there's a CEQA exemption finding. The second document, attachment B, is the draft ordinance, and it's to be read in tandem with attachment C, which is the resolution that would contain a lot of the actual specifics. And I use this model as ordered by the council with the adoption of Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick's motion to use a ordinance then resolution model to allow flexibility for the council to modify the rules, because as I've just noted, it is easier to adopt a resolution than it is to adopt a zoning ordinance. The ordinance basic elements are to create a new chapter in the zoning code to regulate transit rentals. I recommend not interlineating this in some other chapter to make it clear to staff, to the council, to someone 10 years from now, where the rules are for transit rentals. Let's put them in their own chapter, but part of the zoning code, part of Title 10. That's an approach followed by a number of other cities, and it creates some ease, some clarity. We provide that a couple of key definitions. It provides that transit rentals are allowed, again, if this is all if adopted, solely by license. A license is not a CUP. It does not run with the land. It is a 1-year non-renewable grant of a right to have a transient rental. We are not promising, if we grant the license for that 1 year, the city cannot take it away without providing due process at a minimum, which would mean notice of the proposed revocation and an opportunity for that licensed applicant or licensed holder to contest the revocation. But it would not be renewable. It would be renewable only, or not be automatically renewable. Renewal would require affirmative approval by the city. I've put in some application requirements that are relatively standard and allow the council to, and again, in that resolution, adopt anything further at once. It's in the application requirements. It builds in a requirement that you get one license per person at the property where you maintain a domicile. It would have to, which is picks up a whole host of case law that allows you to determine where a domicile is. Essentially, you have to live there. And the city could require proof that you live there if that was a question for a given applicant. It would thus effectively prohibit trusts or corporations or any other non-natural person from applying, and thus from illegally operating a transient rental. It would require notice to the neighbors within 300 feet, within 10 days of submitting the application, to ensure that the neighbors are made aware that someone's applied for a license, and then could come in and provide comments or object or make their statements. And it would require that an owner, as part of the application, consent to an inspection, which would allow the city to double check, A, that what they've asserted is true, and B, to get a sense of if there's a code enforcement problem. If, for example, they've asserted that the bedroom they wish to rent out doesn't match our permitting records for what is the number of allowed bedrooms on the property, we may discover they're using an unpermitted second unit to try to rent it out, something like that. Provide another tool to assess what's actually happening. The next section is standards that govern approval of a transient rental license. Again, these are somewhat vague. I've left in the resolution the hard standards of what zones, if any, how many zones, how many days per year. That's all for the council. I didn't give you drafts on that because I didn't want to step on your toes. But in section 10-1705, I did provide a couple of minimum requirements that it has to be in a zone allowed by the council. It has to be a legal dwelling unit, cannot be a second compliance unit. There can be no open code enforcement cases. And they have to prove registration with the business license program and the transit rental, or the transit occupancy tax program to ensure that they pay their taxes. The other key elements of the resolution, of the ordinance, is that it has a section that allows the council to adopt the resolution and the regulations. And it provides a host of enforcement tools, all of which are intended to be on top of the general enforcement tools in the first article of the municipal code, and in addition to the current tools we have under state law and whatever Sacramento may give us, expecting that there are a number of legislative proposals afoot right now regarding transient rentals. Who knows what will actually come out of the horse trading that is the legislative process. This would allow us to take advantage of anything that comes out of that on top of our own requirements. In the staff report, you'll recall the city manager's recommendation is that of the current tools, the most effective may be the administrative citation process, which is a relatively quick process that allows us to fine up to $500 per violation, which could be per night rented for someone that doesn't have the permit or is renting beyond their allowed number of days. That process does not allow fining above $500. That requires going to the administrative order process, which is a little more involved, but is again doable. The city has no power to fine above $1,000, period, under state law. We have to go, we can't, unfortunately. But it's $1,000, it could be up to $1,000 per violation per day. That can add up if we have enough days. But unfortunately, we can't impose a fine higher than that per any violation under the government code, which limits the city's power. Although, in an egregious case, we could seek imprisonment for up to 6 months. Again, imprisonment has to be approved not by the council. Imprisonment, of course, requires a finding of a criminal conviction by a criminal court judge after a full and fair criminal process. The city alone does not have the power to imprison anyone. Requires a jury and criminal court finding, but it is possible in an egregious case. And that's the ordinance. The last document, the last of the three regulatory documents before you is the resolution that goes with the ordinance that has the hard standards that I've left for you to decide, which would be what zones, operational standards, hosted versus unhosted, time period rules, over-concentration rules. On that one, I'm not sure that's been discussed much. You might consider a minimum distance. I have seen some cities use that, 300 feet, 500 feet. Others have said one per block, depending how long your blocks are. We have some long blocks, some short blocks. Maybe consider that. If you adopt a distance-based rule like that, also consider how you want to allocate it. Is it first come, first serve? So if Bob gets one here and then Sue can't get one within 300 feet, or is it a lottery basis on the same within a distance point consider that. The resolution will also allow you to adopt occupancy limits by bedroom, by number of persons, parking requirements, notification requirements, good neighbor requirements, inspection, advertising restrictions. On advertising, bear in mind that under Supreme Court's relatively recent ruling this summer, we have a somewhat limited power to regulate signs. So we can require, as a condition of getting the license, that you won't put a sign on the property. But if we allow other signs on the property, we may have a challenging time enforcing that against a particular sign. That would depend on the particular facts of the particular proposal. And lastly, neighbor complaint, pardon me, I spelled that wrong in the resolution, hotlines and good neighbor requirements. And I have seen that work to great success in some other cities. I'll point you to Palm Springs' requirements. They're more liberal on transit rentals than I expect Ojai will be, but they have a strong good neighbor program and a good neighbor brochure that we might look at as a model. And they've had some success with their neighbor hotline, in part requiring that once it's approved, the applicant, the then license holder, must provide all of their neighbors within X distance a copy of the brochure and a copy of the hotline number and a copy of their local contact to be the first point of call. So the neighbors will call the local contact first, then call the city if that doesn't work, and then in the end call the police if that doesn't work. Part of the goal would be to minimize calls to the police for non-police items and to ensure that the neighbors try to work it out with each other first before they call the city. That's the last of the 3 regulatory documents. Oh, pardon me, one more element. The third resolution also adopts the $500 fine per day and a $250 application fee. And the other 2 resolutions before you are identical, and they are the legislative subpoena resolutions, one directed to VRBO and one to Airbnb. I recognize there are other companies that do this kind of renting. We can bring those forward to the council at the next meeting. I thought we would start with these 2 as they're the largest companies with the most number of rentals in the city. We can then compile a list of others that these should go to as well, which would require another trip to the council. The subpoena responses I have seen in other cities vary. Airbnb is somewhat willing to provide information, at least in smaller cities. San Francisco is different for them. VRBO hires lawyers and fights, so we will see what they do here, but that's what I would expect, and then it'll be up to the council to figure out how much we want to fight VRBO on getting information. This information would allow you both to assess the numbers of existing usage. You've heard a lot from the community about perceptions of use and of numbers. This would give us some data from the companies, and also would be enforcement tools come enforcement time. In addition, the city come enforcement time can look at the websites. The reviews alone provide information. And advertising itself is not illegal. It's the use that's the illegal. But the advertising can provide a tool to say, hey, I can send them a letter that says, we believe you're using this as a rental. You've had X reviews recently. We're going to fine you for each of those reviews. And by the way, you're still advertising this. You need to not advertise an illegal use. That's one of the areas where we have seen the most action at the state legislature on, if the right bill passes, requiring the Airbnb or VRBO and other internet companies to force their users, their advertisers of the individual units, to state directly, do they have a license from a city that requires a license? And if they have a license, put the permit number in there. I'm not sure if that will pass or not. We will see. We'll keep the council apprised, of course, but that can provide some information. That's the 5 documents I've drafted for you tonight to consider. Please let me know if you have any questions on any pieces of them. I would expect lots. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Summers.
Mayor Blatz,
Mayor
I have
Pro
a
Tem
technical
Wyrick.
question.
Yeah.
On the subpoenas. Is there any separability where if they have grounds for saying, well, we can't provide A through G, one of those, that the others still are binding to comply with? That's the first question. And I have other opinions, so I just wanted about the separability question. The other is, when it says the records produced pursuant shall be confidential, that does not in any way prevent a aggregate report of data. It protects just the individual records, not the results of aggregating the records for reports, or does it?
I read the confidential provision that way, to provide that we wouldn't release the specific information, but we would allow aggregates released.
Could I do aggregate reports?
Yeah, and on the other question, I would expect that they would be able, if they object to Section A, they should submit the rest of it.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions by council at this point? No? All right, it's a discussion item. I have several cards, so let's begin with, this time, Tara Jeffrey.
Good evening, council. My name's Tara Jeffrey. I live on Blanche Street. I'm going to go back in time a little bit to kind of compare and contrast. In 1999, against opposition from the adjacent neighbors, the Emerald Iguana opened their hotel after being issued a conditional use permit by the Planning Commission. The objection by the neighbors at the time was based on it setting a dangerous precedent, establishing commercial operations in residential settings. Since that time, there have been over 14 years of complaints submitted to the city by residents who live next to the Emerald Iguana for violations of their conditional use permit. These complaints have yet to be resolved, as the city currently and historically has turned a blind eye to these violations and have not enforced the mitigations of this permit fully. As part of their CUP, the Emerald Iguana was initially granted a 4-night stay minimum. Within months, the owners came back to the city asking for a 2-night stay, saying that they could not make money with the current agreement. The city amended their CUP, knowing full well the owners of the Emerald Iguana violated the terms of their agreement. They openly advertised 1-night stays on the internet, or booking 1-night stays over the phone up to only a year and a half ago. They did not meet the on-site manager requirement, still don't have an on-site manager, and have over doubled the number of units available to rent and turned one of the rooms into an on-site check-in lobby. There's increased noise and traffic at all times of the day and night, degrading the quality of life for the neighbors in what is supposed to be a single-family residential neighborhood. Most of these problems still remain, unfortunately, and a 14-year turnaround for code enforcement is unacceptable. But what is more disturbing than the city's lack of enforcement is the notion that you are considering being able to control and restrict short-term rentals in any way, shape, or form. Registering and/or licensing them, I think, is a waste of staff's time. Due to the numerous problems with the Emerald Iguana and the obvious kinks in your enforcement capabilities, I strongly suggest that council see this as a cautionary example and take the city of Santa Barbara's lead by voting for a citywide ban of short-term rentals. Santa Barbara was smart enough to know they could not enforce an ordinance allowing restricted short-term vacation rentals and voted to ban all forms in December of 2015. The city of Ojai does at best a subpar job at enforcing its ordinances. Code enforcement officer, I don't think will be able to handle all the complaints. I'll finish with this example. My husband and I have a neighbor who keeps a light on all day and night. It illuminates our bedroom. Aware of the lighting and ordinance, we filed a complaint. After 10 days of nothing happening, we contacted code enforcement and were given the runaround and a bunch of incorrect info. As it stands, we are still waiting for this matter to be dealt with. Had we not been familiar with the lighting ordinance and corrected the code enforcement person, nothing would have been done. I'd like to think this was an isolated incident, but with the Emerald Iguana as proof of what can and probably will happen with an ordinance supporting short-term rentals, I'm not convinced that this will turn out well.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
Thank you. Craig Beam.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I have two matters I'd like to bring to your attention, but first I'd like to absolutely concur with Tara. I live on Blanche as well, one part of my house does, and all of the efforts that I've seen the neighborhood make to deal with clear problems have been basically ignored by the city. There's no reason to believe that rentals of this type would be, treated better, frankly. And that is frankly just facts on the ground. I wanted to bring two specific matters to your attention, however, and also request some deference on time because I want to make sure that you, in fact, received and considered a letter that was submitted to the city manager, I believe, to the city clerk, with a request that it be emailed directly to city council, city manager, and city attorney. This is germane to one of the items, which is your resolution A. Let me talk about resolution B first. I think you have two problems that somehow we seem to be in denial of. The first problem is that you have a housing element problem. As Dale mentioned earlier, the minute you start allowing the permanent conversion of rental stock into something else, you are no longer really in compliance with your housing element goals. And the metrics that are used in the approval of that housing element are no longer relevant because you've chosen to take housing off the list. It's available in Ojai. You had a young man earlier who spoke under public comment who said, hey, this is a real problem. Those are our citizens. Those are our workforce. We need to protect them. Merely saying we're going to make more money by inviting in tourists is hardly protecting them, nor is it consistent with the housing element. I've found in my review of other cities, now that I'm retired, that they have indeed considered housing element compliance a serious issue in the whole issue of legitimizing Airbnb-type operations. I've seen nothing to indicate that the city of Ojai has even looked at that issue. I've raised it before. I've said you have a housing element problem. It's been ignored. I see nothing in here that suggests the city is now looking at it, even though other cities that have serious problems are already saying this is a problem, and I can give you, or give your staff some information on that. The second thing I'd like to point out is you have a CEQA problem. What you're really saying, if you read, for example, under attachment B, draft ordinance, it says drafted to allow for transient rentals as a license, which is not a CUP, which has specifying which zones and which specific standards will apply. I'm sorry, that sounds like a project without known parameters. You've done nothing to analyze the impact of these projects. You've not done any assumptions of where the units may be, what may be traffic, what may be noise, what may be night, light, or other hazards associated with it. This is a CEQA issue. This is a discretionary approval. You can't simply adopt an ordinance and say, well, we'll work it out later. You have to make some assumptions and determine at what point those assumptions are solid enough to analyze it under CEQA. Otherwise, you're in violation of CEQA. Now, on the other matter, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask verification that you do, in fact, have a letter from Ani Vug, I think it's pronounced Vugd.
Yes.
And I provided Mr. Wyrick with a copy, but I didn't have a chance to do all of these, but it basically points out.
I received it and I reviewed it.
Okay,
Anybody
good.
else?
It's
Okay.
supposed to go to the city council. He couldn't make it tonight, and I promised I'd ask if the
All
city
right.
council got it.
Thank you, Mr. Beam.
That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Janet Cull?
Janet Cole, 33-year resident in Ojai. As hopefully you will be initiating the drafting of an ordinance this evening, this may be the last opportunity I have to express once again my concerns regarding short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods and to comment on remarks made at the last meeting and in the newspaper. To our local tourism-oriented shop owners, you said that the community doesn't support you. Visitors do. You may be somewhat correct in that assessment, but it is largely due to the fact, I feel, that you do not provide the sort of competitively priced goods and services we need. Regardless, eliminating short-term rentals from residential neighborhoods will not deter visitors. And to the gentleman who spoke at the last meeting wanting to organize the business owners and help with this process, where have you been? This has been going on for months, actually years. To those folks who find themselves financially dependent on the income from their short-term rental, it is neither the city nor your neighbor's problem. You are conducting business illegally in residential zones. You could do as I did, get a job, and I guarantee I've met as many interesting people right here in Ojai with widely varied backgrounds and experiences as the strangers you bring into my neighborhood. At the last meeting, a council member expressed the notion that short-term rentals exist and are here to stay, and that the ability to regulate them may not be possible. I hope we don't believe that the fact of the existence of something necessitates its acceptance, particularly of something found unacceptable and unworkable in a residential neighborhood. And lastly, when the construction of a motel less than 50 yards from my home was approved by a previous council, I heard members say, I wouldn't mind living next to such a beautiful place. But none of them did they? I recently read in the newspaper an interview with one of our council members who felt short-term rentals should be regulated, but allowed in residential neighborhoods on a limited basis. Does limited mean next door to me, but not next door to you? Please keep the short-term rental business out of my residential neighborhood. Expletive deleted.
Thank you, Janet. Judy DeVore?
Good evening, Judy DeVore. I live in the city. Most of my comments have been covered. I'm very happy to see that the proposed ordinance basically prohibits unhosted rentals. I agree with the previous speaker that total ban would be the best for Ojai, taking everything into consideration. However, if there are to be the rentals, the hosted rentals, I urge the council to instruct Mr. Summers to do whatever adjustments have to be done so that there can be, I think you said it was an administrative, I forgot the language you used, to support the $1,000 a day, $1,000 per violation fine. As I said at the last meeting, under the heading of enforcement and the difficulties with enforcement, which have been highlighted again, if you make the ordinance self-enforcing by creating a large enough fine, and as I said, the Americans with Disabilities Act has a nearly $100,000 per violation fine, which can't be done here. There's a $1,000 cap. But make it big enough so that owners stop and think that it's costing them money and doesn't just become a cost of doing business. So that's my my suggestion, and I hope that the council will take this part of the enforcement question very seriously and do whatever they can to make it painful to not comply. And the second point was, since unhosted rentals are apparently going to be prohibited if the council adopts the ordinance as it is written, I suggest that the council reach out to the public for assistance in identifying these unhosted rentals. And then once they can gather up the information, that the city send out a letter, a cease and desist letter, and give them the option, obviously, of moving into the property, selling the property, or putting it into the long-term rental market, okay, where it will help the community and not undermine its values. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Alex Shoshinov? Sessionoff, is that it?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. I come to you today to encourage you to allow transient rentals in the VMU. My wife and I live in the VMU area next to Sunito Inn, and we don't rent out our house and on a short-term or a long-term basis. We don't plan to either. We just live there. But when we purchased it, we relied on and paid for the potential to theoretically do so in the future. So I'd ask you not to pull out the rug from under us and undermine the idea of village mixed use and the vibrant downtown such a zoning designation hopes to create. That said, we are deeply sympathetic and supportive of more affordable quality housing in Ojai. But when it comes to the downtown area, the village mixed use area, we take a kind of opposite of NIMBY approach, more of a PIMBY, please in my backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Deborah Moe?
Oh, yeah, passing.
Okay. Let's see, Sherry Stuckey. Hi.
Guys, for drafting this ordinance finally. It's nice to see something on paper. Before I begin, I have a couple of mechanical questions on it, but first I'd just like to state personally, you know, over the past I've rented my home, and it's always been like ladies coming for a scrapbooking party or people going to a graduation at Thatcher or wedding. It's never anything, you know, unsavory. So I have a different experience with it. I hope you consider that. In fact, the people that bought Glen Muse rented for many years at vacation rentals, and they were surprised to find that they may not be legal anymore when they were looking. And so, you know, that's his story. He's local. All of his kids go to Thatcher, and they ended up buying here. So it's some good success stories. Mechanically, looking at the legislative subpoena section, I had some concerns. First, if everybody is aware of it, the rationale for a legislative subpoena would be to gather data for the purposes of collecting a TOT tax. The time period is between January 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2015, which means it's a retroactive look. There's no reference to gathering data
for informational purposes, just for collecting tax, which sort of gives it a punitive flavor. In that context, the idea of registering before the ordinance is formalized seems a little, like risky for people who are doing it. With respect to the actual verbiage itself, it does refer to Ojai Ordinance 8.14, that suite of sections. There's no reference to private ownership being a operator, only to hotels. So therefore, you can't use this argument to do a legislative subpoena. The ordinance doesn't support it. It doesn't support private entities collecting taxes. Furthermore, if taxes were to be due, you have to go after the transients themselves per another ordinance, which I can reference in writing later to you. I feel that this whole effort for a legislative subpoena kind of gives the wrong feeling to this. We're trying to come together and move forward, and it sort of seems to take it back. Also, the city never directed private entities to collect tax, and there was no provision for paying it. So the idea of classifying everybody, finding out who they are, and requiring a tax payment isn't even valid. So the data that you're going to get, first of all, isn't going to be comprehensive, because VRBO, for example, won't give it out. Airbnb probably has great data, but they may fight it. And then VRBO also, not all of the data is accurate if they do give it to you. So I would suggest just asking people for the data that you want. Making it a sort of a process where everybody comes together.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Gillian McManus.
I'm passing, thank you very much.
Judy Murphy.
Good evening, Mayor Blatz, council members, staff. You have seen me come before you for the last 3 years to advocate for affordable housing. And it is in that context that I would like to address my comments to you tonight. The issue before us is how will short-term rentals affect our community and its housing stock? I am against allowing our housing, whether it's a house or a granny flat, to be used for vacation rentals, because that decreases the number of available long-term rentals that are available. Those long-term renters that we hope to get will fill our empty schoolrooms. They will use our local medical facilities. They will volunteer in our local service organizations. They'll cheer for our local teams. Vacation renters don't do those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Star Crabtree.
Hi.
Hi.
Short-term rentals do not belong in single-family residential neighborhoods. Our current code clearly states this, and doing illegal things is risky. Registering, etc., in my opinion, does not address or give any incentive for those illegal operators to stop doing what they're doing and profiting from it, and they'd rather do that than to rent to locals, including one of my employees who is looking and cannot find a rental in Ojai. We live, as you know, by 3 house hotels. One's a party house, 2 are hosted. Hosted does not mean that they are quiet. Hosted means that there's more traffic, there's more lights, there's more people, there's more unexpected disruptions, and unless you live by it, you wouldn't know that. And they've been very busy this last month, all 3 of them, very busy. First and foremost, I want to ask you to please stand behind and support the law. Please stand behind and support the law-abiding citizens of Ojai. I do not want to support or help huge publicly traded companies. We have a code. We have a general plan. Let's start by enforcing the code we have and to enforce it well. I'd like to also point out that we have a ban on short-term rentals. We are not enforcing it. I ask you tonight to please vote for the side of the law and support and protect the people who live here and the people who want to rent here and can't find homes. And I'm asking you to do this tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Star. Anita Hendricks?
Good evening, Council, Mayor Blatz, staff, and fellow community members. Although I've said some of these things before, I'm going to say them again. Although many people think of Ojai as a wealthy community, in fact, we have one of the lowest per capita incomes in Ventura County, if not the lowest. Now, how we have people who are working in stores who can't afford even a studio apartment. They can't afford a room. If we take this housing, which is already scarce, we already know that we have a huge deficit in terms of affordable housing. If we allow this precious, precious housing for our citizens to be used for tourism instead of for our residents, we are doing a vast disservice to our population. I know of 3 older women who had government vouchers because they could not afford the already very expensive housing. I mean, if one-bedroom apartment now can go for what, $1,200 to $1,500? Of course, if you have a vacation rental, you can make 3 to 5 times that amount. But these women, one who raised a family here, another who's a former reporter, another one who was homeless, who were lucky enough and worked hard enough to get this voucher to help them afford housing, could not find any housing here in Ojai. And they lost their voucher and the prospect of having a home for themselves. We desperately need affordable housing. Please do not let these places go to tourism. Some people think that rooms are nothing. They're negligible. We can let the rooms go. The rooms, some people can't afford even, as I said before, a room is all they can afford, if that. If we let those rooms go, where are they going to live? I think you all know we have a housing crisis here in Ojai. Let's not deny it. What is our priority? I mean, I understand people wanting to make money. You know, I do understand that, but let's do first things first. Let's make sure that we have housing. That's essential. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Anita. Bill Miley?
Bill Miley, 919 North Signal Street. My family has lived here for 47 years. And I'm a little older than that. Okay. So I have 2 points. So I have 2 bills here tonight. And the first bill says address the issues of the ordinance, etc. So I have 9 points to make, and then I'll tell you my other point of view. Okay. 1, I generally support the ad hoc group's recommendations, the one that started this whole thing out. 2, hosted only. 3, licensed with an annual renewal. And there would be, the fees might be based on the hosting unit's size. One bedroom pays this, bigger unit pays this, second dwelling unit pays this. Okay. 3, oh, that's 3. 4, very important, regular reporting requirements, like every 6 months. And the proper reporting being a prerequisite for the next year's license renewal. Got to report adequately. You don't get it until all the reports are in, okay? 5, the designation of a given number of days per year for vacation rental use by a given host, e.g. 30, 45 days, 60 days. So that, this is the formula, so that the income from a short-term rental would not exceed the money that they would get if they rented it out annually, so that an annual rental would be more profitable. They would basically lose money for the short-term rental if they were doing it instead of the other, okay? 6, adequate enforcement with a significant fine, fees to prevent the rental income from exceeding the violation fees, fines. $500, $1,000, I like that. Okay, 7. Also the subpoena authority, I like that. 8, the placing of limits on number of vacation rentals in residential neighborhoods, like distances between them, 1 block apart, so much apart, whatever. That's really important. Now the second point of view is, some of my colleagues have been telling me that they don't like any of this. I've been hearing it tonight. So I happened to read what Santa Barbara did, and I kind of like that too. So I have 2 points, okay? Santa Barbara described them as hotels. They said short-term rentals, vacation rentals, they're hotels. And then they said, we prohibit hotels in residential zones. Kind of like that. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Bill. Paul Crabtree?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paul Crabtree, Kiyama Road in the Arboleda. Airbnb has rolled out their new marketing campaign. This is their Twitter feed. Mankind belong anywhere. This is their billboard. We imagine a world where you can belong anywhere. This is a full frontal assault on zoning codes. Airbnb is a multi-billion-dollar corporation whose foremost duty is to make their shareholders wealthy. They are essentially franchising out our neighborhoods as theme parks. Yes, the new economy of the internet is powerful enough to completely overwhelm a small town like Ojai. Our general plan is replete with keep the small town rural character. Our zoning aligns with the general plan on this issue and prohibits short-term rentals in single-family residential neighborhoods and allows them in VMU. This is appropriate. Long-term rentals, which are great and needed, are already allowed everywhere. The Land Use Code provides the protocols for property owners to change the zoning or obtain special permissions on their own dime, not on the city's dime. Can you imagine someone developing a subdivision in Ojai without any permissions and selling lots and then insisting afterwards that the city make it right? That's backwards. The answer is simple. We do not need more regulations. Simply enforce the existing code. If someone wants to change it, show them how to submit an application and pay the fees for it under the current code. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I don't have any other speakers card. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak? Dale?
Most of the speakers tonight have spoken in exactly what I believe. I think that frankly, I don't want any vacation rentals in Ojai, and for a while I thought maybe hosted in a home might be okay, but after hearing what Star Crabtree said, I think I've changed my mind on that as well. And a few other points I want to make is that I haven't heard anyone say about the government-assisted housing programs like HUD and Section 8, but sure, those should not be allowed. Any apartments should not be allowed. Anything in a residential zone shouldn't be allowed. Like Paul said, let's enforce our code. And I also just want to say that we are hurting our community with these, and I think what everyone addressed tonight supports that. And I hope that you will vote against vacation rentals. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dale. Anybody else wanting to speak?
God, I got to do something for my team.
All right, come on up, Barbara.
I wasn't going to say anything, but it's been so stacked the other way. It's like everybody got together.
I do want to acknowledge that we received a lengthy correspondence.
Thank you very
from
much. And I really don't need to say much, other than I will make the comment on the, I think it's very interesting. They keep saying that we're going to lose children to the schools. We're going to lose parents that are going to come to PTA meetings. And I'm not renting out a room, but I think those people that do rent out rooms, they would not be available for those families who go to school, and they would not be available for the parents who go to the PTA. Those are rooms that are rented, and so that would not affect families coming here. I really don't think so. And I think that, that's all I'm going to add. You've heard enough tonight.
Thank you, Barbara. Anybody else? Come on, Mo.
Okay. I'm on the other side as well. I manage a couple of vacation rentals. I don't think that those vacation rentals detour from the low-income housing or the housing element strictly because you, me, most of the people couldn't afford to rent the vacation rentals. I think they're high-end. They attract people that come to the film festivals, to a lot of the events here in Ojai that are respectful. The people that own these vacation rentals are more than willing to have a license, want to follow the rules, but in no way, shape, or form are they taking away from our housing element, I feel. I'm with everybody for low-income housing. I think there's a definite need for it here in the city of Ojai. That has been beat to death, and I realize that on February 4th, 9th, somewhere, there it's coming up again for places. But New Year's, there was no room at the inn. And when I say at the inn, I'm saying the inns in Ojai. There was no rooms. Sold out. So this happens regularly. According to the Visitor Center, who my neighbor works on the weekend, it happens a lot where people come in and say, there's no vacancies. What are we going to do? We're attending these events. We've driven a long way. So on the other side, I don't think that all the vacation rentals are party it up or, let's rock and roll. I don't think that's the case in a lot of them. I think that there has been a couple of bad examples that has happened, and it'll probably continue to happen. But I don't think that quality places should be shut down when they're willing to step forward and do what is needed.
Thank you, Deborah. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Briefly, I have a real quick question for Mo, if I may.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead and come on up.
Come on back up, Deborah.
All right, Lenny. That's all right. My button hadn't run out, really.
Does your employer pay SSI, pay FICA, pay state disability insurance?
They probably would if they could, or if, if it was required.
I'm going to call a point of order. I'm not sure this is relevant to the discussion. I think we're
just
beyond the
curious.
agenda item.
Well, I don't think
So I'm
it-
going to
yeah,
stop
it-
the discussion. Thank
There you
you.
go.
Lenny?
The problem with the comment by the last speaker, Leonard Clay, 412 North Fulton Street. Hello, everybody. Problem with the comments from the last speaker is that you can always show a good example of amidst a horrible problem. Nobody is claiming that every single vacation rental causes problems in the neighborhood. But you can't pass an ordinance that says you can have vacation rentals if you promise to be good, if you promise to only cater to rich people, if you promise this or you promise that. The overwhelming number of people in Ojai realize that cumulatively, these create a great problem in our neighborhoods. They create a problem with diminished housing stock, and if people can't, how many visitors can we get? I mean, if there was really, theoretically, if there was a demand for more overnight housing, somebody else would build a new motel someplace where it's permitted, where it's allowed, where it's properly zoned. It's a vote, we don't want them in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. Anybody else? Okay, come on up. I'll get to you next, Jeff.
Linda Stice, Ojai. I think the writing is pretty much on the wall, but I can't resist saying that I think that it's way over-exaggerated, the infractions. I think if there were simple regulations, a complaint hotline, the few problematic places would be out of business in no time at all. I think that there is a problem with affordable housing. I don't think vacation rentals are going to solve that problem. I think going to VRBO and Airbnb is a fine idea, but if you go backwards and get records from the past, are you going to do retroactive fees? I mean, you didn't have any place, any way for us to be paying transient occupancy tax in the past, so how could you go backwards with it? So I think that's kind of a waste of everybody's time. And if you ask us, I will tell you who stayed at my place or how much they've stayed there. So I think with good, simple regulations, STAR's problems could be solved in a day or two. And I'm sorry that she hasn't gotten any sleep, but my neighbors have not complained. I have people there a lot. I don't have any complaints. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I just want to do a little fact checking and what have you. Just being in the business with regards to having rentals and what have you, I can tell you I get a tremendous amount of people who tell me their stories, their horror stories and what have you, getting kicked out. My landlord's basically going to kick me out, feels really sorry, but they can make, twice as much renting it out on a short-term basis and get the luxury of, having a couple rooms, for family and what have you. So I see the pros and cons with that, but that's just not a fact when people say that it doesn't affect, affordable housing. It affects affordable housing in the sense that it's taking it away. The other comment that was made was hotels are always full. Well, I run two, and that's true. They're definitely full on impacted weekends and what have you, but they're not. I think you guys can do a survey or a study, and you can see what our percentage of occupancy is, or we've discussed, over the years what our occupancy levels are. We're not running like Santa Barbara at 99%. So, if we were, that'd be great. Probably, I wouldn't be making that fact check there. Another thing that I think is really important that you need to really publicize and get out, because we had a gentleman here earlier talk about that they're near Sunito, and they're, they want to have, they don't do short-term rentals right now, but they want to have the ability to do it in the future, and that they bought the property with the representation that they could do short-term rental. I think that's really scary. That's I think not liable, but there's an issue there with regards to disclosure and what have you. So I think it's really important. I know there's been a lot of questions with regards to VMU, being legal, not being legal. Well, I'm in commercial in both my properties, but I'm adjacent to VMU, and it's really interesting because people think, well, I'm legal because it's commercial / residential, but there's a process to be legal. It's going through the procedure, or going through the requirements, from the city and everything else. And then if they want to be legal, then you're basically regulated by certain other agencies, So it seems really simple, but there's some requirements and also adherences that really need to be publicized, because people have sort of a misconception with respect to how simple it is to operate that.
Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else? No? All right, I'll bring it back to council for discussion and questions of staff. Who wants to start?
Mayor Blatz, I'll start again tonight. Last meeting, I stated that it was going to be difficult for me. Well, first of all, that I did not see fit unhosted vacation rentals in any residential zones. That I might be convinced to have hosted vacation or rental zones. And then I listened to Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick's idea about licensing process, because I was open to other zones having resident or vacation rentals. But then I know the concern about our housing element, and I know the concern about our stock, so I started to do more research on how much housing do we have, and what have we built over time, and our population over time. And it really hasn't increased. First of all, our population, and we are getting older for various reasons. Our housing stock has not increased much to begin with. So if we decide to do vacation rentals, our housing stock is going to be actually reduced to people that either could run a business or could live in residential zones. I mean, those two, for that reason, that it really does it puts a lot of concerns to me that, is this the right business to have in Ojai for that reason? And I could not think about any pros that could sway me the other way. Because in reality, I think that, vacation rentals could provide a better unit, could make the community a little bit more beautiful. There is a sense of creativity, or just a sense of appreciation by tourists coming to the city of Ojai. But I can't wrap my head around when our housing stock is very limited. It rarely increases. Our population is not increasing, and our need of housing just in the state is needed. And for that reason, I really cannot support any type of vacation rentals in any zones. I'm interested to see what my colleagues have to say about that. On top of that, the second unit, having hosted units, going back to our housing element, we're trying to figure out creative ways of meeting those RENA numbers, because it does have an implication from the state that if they decide that we're not creating units, that they could come down on us if they decide and really regulate or come and develop in our city. Now, it's going to take a while, but they could. That's a possibility. And if we're changing those hosted units to be vacation rentals, I think that we're not following our housing element, hence we're not being consistent with our general plan. So for those reasons, I really can't support vacation rentals. Not that I have anything against the idea, but just in this community, to me, it does not make sense.
Councilman Haney?
I'll wait.
Councilwoman Clapp?
This matter's gone on a long time, and it's been frustrating, but in some ways I'm glad it's gone on a long time because it's been a moving target. And the more it moves in the direction that towards the conclusion I think I've come to at this point. I'm going to read just the last bit of what I read last time I was here because it sort of summarizes my feelings on the issue. This online business model circumvents and undermines community zoning laws. It is also an assault on legitimate licensed businesses playing by the rules. Vacation rentals seem benign on their face. At first, I had little objection, but as time has passed and the unintended consequences of these seemingly harmless home-based hotels has emerged, my opinion has changed. I have learned how they impact school enrollment, housing stock, volunteerism, and community cohesion. I've seen how they have turned neighbor against neighbor. They are not good for our town. I was elected to help create policy for the greater good of our entire community, and I take this role very seriously and will always make my decision based with this foremost in my mind. So since today, I added a little bit at the end of this statement that since writing these words, the city of Santa Barbara took the bold step to outlaw all forms of vacation rentals in their community. Their attempt to allow hosted vacation rentals failed. Santa Barbara is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. They should be an example to us how to be a tourist town that doesn't lose its soul by losing control of their destiny. The new shadow economy is undermining communities worldwide for the financial gain of a few. They circumvent labor laws, risk the safety of their shadow customers by using untrained, unlicensed operators as their employees, which incidentally are being treated as subcontractors, a way for the shadow organization to avoid any responsibility for their workers, i.e. workman compensation insurance, contributions to Social Security, medical plans, etc. I, for one, want to follow Santa Barbara's lead and have a citywide prohibition of hosted or unhosted vacation rentals. As I mentioned earlier, anyone with a room in their home or an extra house who wants extra income has the existing right to rent them out to long-term renters. So I would agree with Severo. Laura, I don't feel these have a place in our community, and I would like to see us have a citywide prohibition. Regarding VMU, currently, VMU, you are allowed to have a bed and breakfast in VMU. So the gentleman who purchased a home in the anticipation of being able to do a vacation rental has the option of doing a bed and breakfast through the standard procedures which are in our codes. So I would suggest if you want to continue with something like this, you go to the city and they can give you the guidelines in which you have to follow to become a legitimate bed and breakfast in a village mixed-use zone. That's all I have to say.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
A couple of points I want to make. Number one, I concur that with the residential housing stock that we have in the VMU, that's important, along with every other zone, to preserve and not lose to vacation rentals. Frankly, there are single-family residences and commercial zones in this city as well. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that you would want to, if the mandate is that we are going to preserve our housing stock, it doesn't really matter what zone it's in. If that's an important issue, I think it is. People maybe forget how far north the VMU boundary goes in our city. It goes into areas well north of, for example, it goes north of Elisa, where there's areas of nothing but, right now, single-family residences. So I think that's where I would concur with Councilperson Clapp. But I also want to make a point that if we, and I also want to make a point that Laguna Beach has followed Santa Barbara's lead, I understand, recently, and going to the direction of simply not allowing it. And my position has kind of evolved as well, similar to I think the other people in this council, that if it can't be strictly regulated, then it should not be allowed at all. In other words, what's most enforceable? If most enforceable is not allowing it at all, then that's I'm not going to object to that. Enforceability has always been my question, and I was worried that a total ban might be a problem with enforceable, and that gets me to my next point. If we are going to assert that we do not want vacation rentals, I still think we're going to have to look at enforcement tools that are not currently in the code. We're going to have to look at enhancing our enforcement tools. I'm not convinced that simply enforcing that we have the tools to achieve our goal with the existing code. If we don't want it in the residential zones, I think we're going to need to look at enforcement enhancements. And finally, along those lines, for action tonight, I have a question of a city attorney about the legislative subpoenas. I think there was an interesting and a point that I wanted some clarification about, where that a lot of the resolution for the legislative subpoenas referred to the transit occupancy tax. And yet that really isn't the main purpose in my mind, of the legislative subpoena, tax collection. The main point of the legislative subpoenas is to get information about the scale of the activity in the community right now. And I'm wondering if that's an essential element, all the references to collection of tax in the legislative subpoena. That's a question.
I had drafted the legislative subpoena to both get information for existing listings and the dates and duration of previous usage and previous rentals over the year in 2015. That's items A through C. Items D through G would serve to enforce the tax if the city wished to retroactively enforce the tax. If the city wanted to forget the taxes and just ask where these existed, with the idea of having a to-do list of enforcement, assuming that those folks continue to rent it and don't heed what action I suspect the council may take, then you could delete items D through G and just ask A through C, which would be A, listing of all properties rented on the sites, B, username, what's associated with each address, and email and contact info, including the physical address, and C, dates and duration of stay.
And then the deletion of references to collection of the tax in the resolution?
Yep.
Or would that, okay. I'm just asking, I'm not making a motion, I'm just asking information.
It could be modified to reflect that.
Okay, and then I just want to bring that out for deliberation. And then close by just saying, to repeat myself, I certainly have all along respected the fact that we've got to get this under control, because it is something of a cancer on our community if it's not, and the suspension of enforcement for many years led to a lot of problems, leading to existing problems. But again, to repeat myself, if we're going to say none, we're going to have to look at enhancing our enforcement tools by ordinance, I believe.
Councilman Haney?
Well, no, I'll wait for you.
Okay. I have a little bit different take on this than the three colleagues of mine so far. I truly believe that any vacation rentals in a residential zone should not be permitted. I think it's a deterioration of what the residential zones are meant to be, and I don't think that they should be allowed at all. Now, that's not to say that those people that may have guest houses or granny flats or whatever you want to call them can't rent it out under the current code. It's just they can only rent it out once a month, because they certainly can do month-to-month rentals. And you could perceivably have a tenant in there every month. But I don't think that the short-term vacation rentals belong in our neighborhoods. I don't see any possible benefit that our neighborhoods derive from having vacation rentals, short-term vacation rentals. However, I believe in the commercial and the VMU. I don't have a problem with them there. I think the VMU is a zone which has been crafted to take in some commercial and some residential aspects, live, work. I don't think that it's a problem in the VMU. I think that zone could support some vacation rentals. And in the commercial, I agree that we could license them. I don't think we should have to have a conditional use permit in the VMU. I think it ought to be a licensing process. And we have one that's already permitted in the VMU. If other people came forward in the VMU and they got a license and followed the criteria, I don't have a problem with it there. But I do have a real problem with it in our neighborhoods, in our residential zones.
Okay, so I was the only one who voted no last time, correct? Oh, correct. I did. I was the only one who voted no. And I can sit back here with a little bit of hindsight, and I'll tell you why I said no. We spent a lot of time drafting. Matt, about how many hours did you spend drafting all this information that you provided to us tonight?
It was roughly 6 to 8 between drafting and thinking. I can get you an exact accounting.
Okay. So I felt personally we hadn't had this discussion and that we were wasting our money. That's why I voted no. So that's the first thing that you need to understand. It's a good hindsight, isn't it? That makes me a winner. But, I have vacillated on this whole thing. When the phrase shared economy first came out, I was absolutely against it. Absolutely. I just don't, I'm pro-worker, I'm probably pro-union. I am just, pro-taking care of people. And I didn't see this shared economy as taking care of people. I saw it undermining people. So initially, I was totally against it. And then as I've worked through this process, I'll be honest with you, I started feeling some concern for some individuals in our community that have a need for this. And my fear is that we're going to kick those people to the side of the road. So, and I think that's a valid concern. And I said it at the last meeting also. Everyone in this room is a good person. I believe everyone in this community is a good person. And we all have special needs. We all have different needs. And we all, what makes Ojai great is the ability for us to talk and for us to work through these challenges. So, that's where I've gone. I've gone to that point where, I've even asked myself, who even brought this shit up that it's a problem? I mean, seriously, I talk to everyone in my neighborhood, and I ask them about vacation rentals, and they go, say what? I mean, it's not an issue to them. So I don't even know how this came to the forefront as being an issue, but it is here now. And it's going to stay until we decide on what we're going to do. So I'm not 100% opposed. In fact, a big part of me would agree with Mayor Blatz that, in fact, I remember running for city council that we were asked about vacation rentals. And I believe clearly I stated that we already had a zone for those, and that was the VMU. So I'm going to stand behind that I think there is a place for it. And I'm not sure about the commercial, because to be honest with you, we don't have a lot of commercial. We don't have a lot of commercial here in town. We're a residential, small-town residential community. We have very little business. We have some, but very little. So I don't know how that's going to enhance anyone's ability to manage their personal resources through the commercial side of it. But I do the other side I do. So I think there's a consensus right now to end it, to terminate it. And I'll be upfront about it. I'd be saddened by it. But I also feel that as a councilman that we've got to listen to our community. And what I'm hearing tonight is our community doesn't want this. So.
Okay, thank you. I have one other comment that I'd like to make as well. Right now on our books, it is illegal to have vacation rentals in a residential zone. It's not illegal to have vacation rentals in our VMU if you have a CUP. It's not illegal to have it, I don't think, in commercial zones.
With the caveat that it would have to be approved as either a motel, a hotel, or a bed and breakfast.
Okay.
And keep in mind that there's rules about qualifying as a bed and breakfast that you're renting a room out in a typical house would not qualify, but if you made the appropriate application, you could qualify as an actual dedicated bed and breakfast.
All right. So what we've really been asked to do over the course of the last few weeks is a group of people have come forward that have asked us to change the rules to allow them to do something which is currently illegal to do, yet they're doing it. And they've done it even though it has been illegal. And the city, in looking at the situation, has had to look at it from the standpoint that these people are generating revenues without us generating any any kind of transient occupancy tax. They're doing it with no regulation, and they're doing it in our neighborhoods. So I look at it as though a group of people have come to this council, this body, and to the community, saying, we want you to change the rules for us. And I, as a council person, have to decide, okay, is this change that they're asking for good for our communities, good for our neighborhoods, and good for Ojai? And I say, no, I don't believe it is good. That's why I say I don't believe they should be in residential zones. They're not allowed in residential zones now. I don't think we should change that. However, in the VMU, I think that we should change it from having to have a conditional use permit to a license. That's the only thing that I'm saying. I'm going to leave our existing ordinance intact, figure out a way that we can enforce it, and just change vacation rentals in the VMU to allow them with a license and with regulations, and do away with the CUP and not change anything else in our ordinance. That's what I'm in favor of. And I understand that my colleagues may want to do away with them altogether. I'm just giving you my point of view, that I really think the existing ordinance can stay in place. We can figure out how to enforce it, and all we have to do is change from a really onerous conditional use permit requirement to a license.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes.
If I may, I had that same idea, but I hesitate for a couple of reasons. I look at the map for the BMU, and there's some apartment complex there. So it's going to be a little bit more trickier than what we think. It's not going to be as simple. Second thing is, how many units do we have in VMU? Because looking at the whole map, it's very limited. It's not, compared to the other zones, there's other bigger zones, I imagine there's more units. But again, and then the third, and so I don't think if that's necessarily appropriate. The third thing is, this business model is different, in my opinion, than other businesses that are for the VMU. Because the VMU, it's village mix, but there's the whole idea, as I understand it, and maybe staff could correct me if I'm wrong, is that residents could live in that area and have more options to have different variety of occupations. So if we do have a vacation rental that is, for example, unhosted, then it to me that goes against our idea of having residential and occupation at the same location. So that's why I hesitate. I mean, I was open to the idea, but then I cringe.
While you have the map there, could I ask a question of Councilman Laura? My memory is that the VMU, for example, goes all the way up to Oak Street.
Yes.
Along Signal.
It goes up to Eucalyptus in certain areas.
And it takes in a lot of
Yeah.
single-family residences.
So it doesn't go to West Eucalyptus, it goes through East.
Right. And so I share your concern just from the standpoint of housing stock. There's a lot of residential property in the VMU. And I think there's the issue of how maybe, I think, the VMU may be more extensive into the residential zones than people realize. And so you don't want an unintended consequence of losing a residential area by concentrating without controls, or even if you can't enforce those controls. So I share that concern. I just have, I'm not sure I share the mayor's feeling about it.
Well, I can appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor.
I just have one comment. If it is the council's desire that these units not be allowed in the VMU, we have one legal unit that currently fully meets our current law. So I think we need to make a decision on whether we're actually going to stop them, or
If I could jump in on that one unit in the VMU was granted a conditional use permit, which runs with the land in full compliance with the law in place at the time. The city council lacks the power to revoke that.
Okay.
For that one that has a CUP. Others that have existed without a CUP, we can enforce against them because they never got a CUP. But for the one that has a CUP, the city lacks the power to revoke that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments? Yes,
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Clapp.
Yes, I think the VMU zone was created decades or more ago. It was a new idea in planning communities. And as time has gone by, VMU has seemed to have fallen away as being not as ideal as one had anticipated when they did it. So my question is really whether those VMU boundaries are really valid at this point. Because they do encompass a tremendous number of single-family dwellings. And if we were to allow unhosted vacation rentals in that area, we would lose a tremendous amount of housing stock. Right now, the way the law reads in village mixed use is you can have a hotel there and go through the proper procedures to create a hotel. And maybe it just needs to stay that way. And the rest of the community needs to be out of bounds for vacation rentals.
All right, any other comments of the council? Anybody want to make a motion?
Well, I'm going to see if there's an appetite for the legislative subpoenas by making a motion. And it may die for lack of a second, but just from the standpoint of gaining us information that may be useful for thinking about appropriate enforcement tools, I'm going to make, and I'll see if I can craft this motion in a way that makes sense. We'll start with the Airbnb. In terms of the Airbnb motion, and please help me out, Mr. Summers, if this makes sense, if we could craft a motion that says that we'll only make a motion for the legislative subpoena for Section 2, A, B, and C only, and deletion of references to collection of transit occupancy tax. Is that a motion that makes sense?
I would add that you direct me to also add a sentence along the lines of the city's code currently prohibits, we have the sites currently prohibits these in most zones, and the city council is assessing available enforcement tools for which it will need an accounting of existing transit rental usage, something like that. As a replacement for the taxation language for justifying why we're issuing.
Yes, for justifying it, in other words, for the basis of getting information. So I'll accept that language, it's on the tape, it's on video, and I'm going to go ahead and make that motion.
Just for Airbnb?
Well, there's two motions.
Okay.
You could do one motion to adopt both resolutions.
And I'm going to make
specify in that motion.
One motion for two, the only difference between the two motions being the one motion stating the online rental booking service Airbnb, and the other motion specifying online rental booking services HomeAway and VRBO. That's my motion.
I have a second for discussion.
Okay, further discussion?
I'd like to ask the city attorney, is there any reason that we could not also include Flip Key, vacation rentals, independent traveler, couch surfing, and TripAdvisor, and tripping.com?
The council could make I think we can do that. It would be direct me to draft for the mayor's signature duplicate resolutions, duplicating the models here for those websites.
I accept that amendment.
And if you could say those names again.
Vacationrentals.com, of course, VRBO, and Airbnb, independenttraveler.com, flipkey.com, tripping.com, HomeAway, couchsurfing.com, tripadvisor.com, and Craigslist.
All right, do we have,
All
another-
right.
do we have a second on that?
Well, first of all,
I was the second.
Hold on.
I like that a little more. You might as well throw in Twitter and Facebook. I just have one question. How are we going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for this enforcement?
Money.
I just want to know. How are we going to do it?
Hold on, we're talking about,
This is not enforcement.
this is just to get information. Enforcement will be
Right.
the subject of another
Right.
topic,
Well,
okay?
no. Someone's going to have to pay to go after all of these entities and to acquire this information. I'd like to know on the front end, not on the back end, who's going to pay for it? And how long are we willing to pay for it?
You have an investigator?
Well, the motion is that we're going to issue the subpoenas. We don't know what's going to happen if they answer or they don't answer. If they answer, then we don't have to worry about it. If they don't answer, then they'll have to come back before us to determine what we're going to do. That's the way I look at it.
And on that point, I'll note that issuing it would be within our retainer, but fighting them is not within the retainer. We can't take a fight on.
And so the
like that
motion
without
is simply
retainer.
to issue.
Yeah.
And I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick's earlier comments that we are going to have to think about other enforcement tools in the future because we are going to have to be creative. I think this is an approach, but it's not the only approach. So
All
we
right,
have a
there's an
motion.
amended motion. Do I have an amended second?
I believe the seconder made the amendment. It was accepted by the maker of the motion.
Okay.
So
All
the
right.
seconder's making of the amendment would inherently include the second.
Okay.
So
Any
I believe
further-
the amended motion is on the table.
All right,
Okay.
any further discussion?
Okay.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapp?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
No.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. All right,
Okay, now.
I'm welcoming another motion.
That's what, yes.
Well, there's a combination of things we have to do.
41, sorry.
Pardon?
Yeah.
All right, I'll make a motion. I'm going to make a motion. We do absolutely nothing with the existing ordinance.
Could I make a suggestion to that, Mayor Blatz?
Yes.
For your consideration before we see if you have a second? It would be a motion to direct staff to draft a resolution to bring back for the council that would say, one, the council confirms that the existing zoning code, as cited in the staff report, and as we've discussed ad nauseum, prohibits vacation rentals hosted and unhosted, with the exception of a lawful licensed hotel, motel, or bed and breakfast. And two, the suspension of enforcement presently existing is confirmed to be lifted effective February 1st, 2016. That way we have it in writing,
Okay.
adopted by the council. We'd bring that to your next meeting. That would be my suggestion for your motion.
Okay. And I would also add to that motion that rather in the VMU, that it be a conditional use permit that runs with the land. We do it by licensing.
No.
No, he's saying with license.
CUP.
No, no license.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
The
Clarify.
CUP runs with the land, and we have no control over it.
Correct.
A license, we have the opportunity to renew it annually or take it away.
Saying no CU.
Right.
Okay, I agree with
Okay.
that, yes.
All right, that's my motion. Yes.
Thank you. Further point to keep in mind, the first element of that with regard to all of the zones other than the VMU would be bring back the resolution. Second piece, creating the licensure scheme for the VMU would be take what we have here and trip that through the planning commission, then come back to council. So it'd be two pieces. But in the resolution, if adopted as such, I would note that it does not apply to VMU.
Okay, that's procedurally, as long as you take care of whatever we have to do procedurally, that's my motion.
And can I just clarify? So what we just said is we're going to allow vacation rentals in VMUs with a license? I just want to be clear on this.
That's my motion.
That's his motion, okay? Not a CUP,
Correct.
but with a license,
Correct.
okay? Right. As long as it meets the standards of a hotel, motel.
That's
Is that what we're saying?
Whatever
Wait, that's a,
is for the license.
that's a key question. I think that
That was my question, too.
Councilmember Haney hit
Clarity.
on a key question that you should consider, Mayor Blatz. Many of the existing vacation rentals cannot meet the definition of a bed and breakfast.
Right.
So the question would be, do you want the licensure to be only those that meet the hotel, the motel, or bed and breakfast?
Yes.
Or else, do you want to allow more of them in the VMU with a license in your motion?
I would say that they need to meet the criteria of a bed and breakfast.
Okay, and that would preserve a CUP requirement for a motel or a hotel. And the key difference in the definition, I don't have all three of them in front of me. The key difference is hotels and motels is 5 or more rooms. Bed and breakfast is less than 5. So I would suggest perhaps maintaining the CUP requirement for hotels and motels.
Correct.
Point of information, I think lodging in the VMU is an allowed use.
Is it by right?
Doesn't require CUP. It requires a license
Check
and
that.
and approval. Before we get into the weeds here, I'm trying to remember the zoning table, and I don't recall CUP in the VMU. I recall it being an allowed use with licensing.
The current code does not do much in regard to licensing. That's a new concept for the most part. It's always DRP or CUP.
I mean, a license as a business, as a...
Oh, it's always but the
as a
business
lodging
license
business.
is independent of the land use license.
What I'm trying to say is, let's make sure we don't do something that's nonsensical here.
Understood. Give me a moment.
Okay. I'm not sure a CUP is required in the VMU for a lodging enterprise.
Well, if it's not, I'm not suggesting that it become.
No, we're not going to add anything, in other words.
Right. I am just suggesting that for a short-term vacation rental, it be licensed the same way that
I agree.
a bed and breakfast would be licensed with no change to a hotel motel.
Right, we're not...
Wait a minute.
We're not
Excuse me.
adding any new entitlements.
So are we saying that short-term vacation rentals will be allowed in VMU, or are you saying that you want somebody to have the ability to pursue the existing allowable use of a hotel, motel, or bed and breakfast?
My motion is that we enforce the existing ordinance as it is related to residential zones.
Yes.
And to change the existing ordinance when it comes to the village mixed-use zone to allow for vacation rentals consistent with a license that is the license that would be required for a bed and breakfast.
And what is that license?
At the moment, having confirmed it, it's in Table 2.4. In the VMU, hotel, motel, lodge, and timeshare facility is a permitted use. It does. Thank you, Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick, for the clarification. It does not require a CUP. So this would be adding the requirement for a license.
Correct. It would be adding the requirement for a license for a short-term vacation rental. That's my motion.
No, I don't know on that.
So I want to make sure that at least I understand it. You're basically elevating, saying, yes, a vacation rental is allowable if that license is.
Right. Currently, our existing code says no short-term rentals in residential zones. No change to that. Currently, our ordinance says you can have a vacation rental with a conditional use permit in a VMU.
It does not say
The
that.
problem I have with that is the city has a lot less control over something that's been issued under a conditional use permit because it runs with the land, it runs from owner to owner, and you have, as we indicated earlier, that we don't have as much ability to revoke it.
I understand that, but it's a lot more cumbersome to get a CUP than it would have been to get a license.
A point of clarification to note, as I just looked up at the moment, in the VMU, it doesn't require a CUP. One has been issued a CUP. I'm not entirely familiar with the facts of that
It doesn't require,
issuance.
it's a permitted use.
It's a permitted
If you meet the
use.
requirements for a lodging facility.
If you meet that definition, which, as I've noted, few meet it.
Okay,
And-
so you're
and
saying that-
also-
hold on for a second. So you're saying that a short-term vacation rental is allowed in the VMU is unrestricted in that zone?
Vacation rentals are not allowed in VMUs. This is the point of clarification, it's very important. Vacation rentals are not allowed in VMUs.
A bed and breakfast is allowed if it meets the full definition of the bed and breakfast. But
Correct.
renting out a room in your house almost certainly does not meet the definition of the bed and breakfast. Renting out your whole house doesn't meet it because it requires an on-site caretaker. And other elements.
So how is the one that we have with a conditional use permit, how is that approved if it's not allowed?
The one we have, I'm not fully familiar with how it was approved. My understanding, that was before my time at the city, my understanding is that the planning commission approved it as a CUP under some set of findings it made appropriate. We can look that up
Okay,
for
so
detail.
the existing.
And that was before I joined the
The
city.
existing ordinance does not allow for vacation rentals in the VMU unless they meet the criteria of a bed and breakfast, correct?
Correct.
Okay, then I see no reason to do anything with our existing ordinance.
All right.
Agree.
Except for
makes more sense to
the,
me.
except for the assertion of lifting the suspension
Correct,
as outlined by the city attorney.
exactly.
So please clarify, what are we doing with VMU?
Nothing.
I've received some clarification from Community Development Director Wold on the one that was previously approved. It was approved via a CUP with a determination of similar use, that exact proposed facility was sufficiently similar to a motel that it was approvable.
I'm going to weigh in because I've read that CUP, and I've read the minutes, and I've read that documentation. And a key part of the findings justifying that CUP was there was no additional density, residential density, than the existing acreage, which is why when the density was increased over time beyond that original finding, it became an issue.
So it sounds like the CUP is an issue for another day.
Right. I think that given the fact that our current ordinance does not permit vacation rentals in any zone, then I suggest we do nothing with our existing ordinance, and we just figure out a way to enforce it. And we lift the moratorium on
We
enforcement.
use the language for assertion of the, okay.
And let me repeat how I understand that for clarity's sake, for me, for you, and for the public. This would be a motion to leave all of the existing zoning rules in place, to adopt a resolution to be brought back to your next meeting that would state, in essence, the city council confirms its reading that under the principles of permissive zoning, no vacation rentals are allowed anywhere in the city. In the zones in which they are already permitted by Table 2.4, which would include the VMU, a hotel, a motel, or a bed and breakfast is allowed if approved through the appropriate process. And that the city council confirms that it has lifted, by adoption of that, will lift the existing suspension of enforcement of the vacation rental prohibitions effective February 1st, 2016, and will evaluate additional enforcement tools to bring to your attention on top of what we already have. That's how I understand this motion.
And that's my
Mr.
motion.
Second,
Okay. Discussion?
yes. Just for clarification, so we will have another discussion when this comes back about enforcement.
Yeah, what
Fines, penalties, et cetera, we're not going to take that on tonight. Is that correct?
that's how I understand the motion.
Okay, okay.
And that would in part, we have a resolution that adopts a fine, but I'd rather have the opportunity to recraft it to match
I think we need to do
where
that.
we're going, where the council is going
It's
now.
getting late.
We have a motion on the table.
All right, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapp?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
First, yeah.
With deep reservations, yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. All right, moving on to the next discussion item. It's item number 5, Second Unit Compliance Program. Mr. Clark?
So we were asked to bring forward the second unit compliance program, which has run its course as of December 21st. We received 32 applications, and of those, 9 have been completed, so the remainder are moving through the process. And there were a few questions that we wanted to bring forward to the City Council. First of all, how long should applicants be given to complete their applications and make the required improvements? And this is thinking that we want them to diligently pursue that now that we've been very lenient about accepting applications. So we suggest that they be given 6 months to obtain any needed permits and 6 months following the issuance of permits to get the work completed, which is the standard length of time that we would normally allow. Secondly, how should the PL zone be addressed? There was one application that we received in the PL zone, and the options were in order to accept that application, because the PL zone is not in the guidelines, we could amend the guidelines to allow for that use, and then it would become an existing non-conforming use within that zone. The other option was to change the zone. The owner expressed an interest in changing the zone to VMU, which would be spot zoning. And furthermore, the zone change process requires a general plan amendment and a zoning amendment, and is quite a big investment of time and effort. So our recommendation is that you direct us to come back with a resolution amending the guidelines to permit compliance units in the PL zone. And then the third question was, we're assuming that now that the compliance period is over, that as we become aware of non-conforming second units, non-permitted second units, that we would enforce those. So abate them.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right, any questions of staff?
Yes. Mr. Summers, you concur we could address the PL zone issue solely by resolution?
To add the PL zone
And
would
the
be,
compliance program permit compliance units in the PL zone by resolution alone?
yes, because the code was already amended in 2014 to provide that the second unit compliance program would exist.
Right.
So I do not believe we would need to amend the code
So
to add
we
PL.
can confirm we can do it by resolution, a non-conforming? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Clark, do you have any sense of the people who have not come forward as to the major inhibition, the reason they have not? Is it money, or is it something else?
I really don't know.
Okay. Along those lines, I think we should, my comment is, in terms of how to deal with enforcement against units, I'm a little concerned about a couple of things. One is, as you well know, there was, I'm not going to get into the detail, but a fee charge for some people that maybe they shouldn't have been told they had to pay. There was the issue of some confusion over the deadline being a time for applications to be received as opposed to deemed complete. There was an issue about the checklist that we passed in the resolution that ended up not being used as in the form that we passed it. And what I'm suggesting is that I think we need to start the enforcement action, but I want to do it in as much of a warning fashion as possible, with information coming back to this council as to how people are what information is coming from that, and we may need to rethink the issue of the deadline, but we're going to have to get some information before we make a judgment on that. That's my comment.
Any other comments?
I have a question for staff. How else are we determining if there are illegal second units other than the sanitary district? Like, is there an active program that we're going by to look for them?
No, they come up either through complaints or through, if for some reason we're involved in some other action on a property and we discover it. Or I remember one that came forward because someone made an application to do remodeling, and we discovered they had 2 units when they were only supposed to have 1.
So under those circumstances, they wouldn't be able to, they would have to,
They wouldn't, we would not accept an application for the compliance program, and we would require them either to legalize or abate their illegal unit. And oftentimes, it would be very difficult to legalize it because of property constraints.
have you gotten to any other notification from the sanitary district that there's other non-compliant second units in the city limits?
Since the end of the
they
program?
started their sewer program?
Well, we continuously received notifications even through a portion of 2015. I don't remember exactly when the last one was, but we haven't received any in the last several months.
Any other comments or questions of staff?
You actually don't need a motion from us, just a direction on the proposed resolution.
There's no motion being requested, but if you have some direction on any of these questions or anything else about the program,
Well, I certainly would like it, but my resolution and then the direction I'd like is as much information as possible as we can compile on the units that haven't applied and give people warnings. I don't want until we've reconsidered the amended resolution, I don't want any fines assessed.
Okay.
I could support that direction too, and the reason why is I don't know if we fully understand how many are out there, and I don't know if we have a program that we go by to look for them. So,
and since it's coming up to us again, let's get more information and look at it.
All right, this is a discussion item, and I have some speakers cards. Craig Beam, I don't see Craig here anymore.
I believe he left.
Sherry Stuckey,
It's me again.
welcome again.
I'm always on the wrong side. Here I am again. I think that this second unit program was a really good idea, especially if you want to increase housing units. And I've encouraged many people to take advantage of it, and not everybody has. I think a lot of it has to do with they don't understand it. Another issue might be that it's really expensive to implement one. Just on a tax basis, it's close to $20,000. And it's amortized over 5 years, and sometimes, 35 or roughly 3,000 is right up front plus the permit fees, but then 17 over 5. And everybody keeps referring to low-income housing and housing stock and all this, but you can't really afford to offer a unit for a low-income price if you have to pay, close to, let's just average it out, say $4,000 to $5,000 more a year in taxes when you're already paying $10,000 a year. So I think that that's something, if there was a way you guys could incentivize people to make real second units that did conform to code and that people could actually rent them for an affordable price, I think that'd be a great idea. So I think that extending this program with some kind of initiative like that is something I think would be really useful, especially in light of what happened tonight with the vacation rentals. So I could tell you a lot of people that are doing these vacation rentals do need the money, and they may very well be more interested in doing a legal second unit dwelling now.
Okay, can I clarify something with your
Yes.
statement? The $20,000 is a sanitation fee for the sewer connection.
For example,
Right.
Glen Muse.
Right, I just wanted to clarify that. And then you're saying the $10,000 in taxes, if this is a part of a housing stock that doesn't exist, quote, in anyone's,
Well, my property taxes.
how is it taxed if it doesn't exist?
I have a place that's a workshop I could convert to a second unit, and I went in and I applied just to see, maybe I'll do it, And when I looked at it, my basis for taxes, $10,000 a year, and then to do it, they waived the school bond for me, which I was lucky because I had already legalized this workshop. And then they wanted $17,000 for the sewer fee. And it's only amortized over 5 years. At least if they could spread it out over 10 or 15, that would help. But I would love to, I've always wanted to be able to, I like to have people on the property. It's nice to have somebody else around. So I think it's a great idea if we could just kind of maybe work it from that angle for housing stock. Just try to make it easy.
Thank you, Sherry. Doug Labar. Thank you for waiting patiently, Doug.
I was just about to go to sleep back there. So Doug Labar, 206 South Blanche. I bought my house in 1980. It had PL zoning on it. How it got there, I don't know. But there were 17 people living on the property when I bought it. It used to belong to Hacienda Help Services. And there were people living in the garage, in the attic. The dining room had been converted. It was an intensive residential place. Anyway, as you know, my property doesn't fall into the program, and I need it to. So I would encourage you to add PL quasi-public to the compliance program. I've got my mother, who's 91, and my father, who's 93, living in the house in the back. And when they transition, I was thinking, well, I was looking at the list of PL that I could put in a public golf course there.
Thank you, Doug.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Labar.
Yeah.
How did you find out about the second unit program?
The second unit program?
The non-legal, yes.
Trying to think whether I saw it in the paper or heard it from somebody, I don't know. I think that it was pretty well publicized.
Okay.
In answer to the query about the costs, I figured that it'll probably cost me $30,000 to transfer it over with improvements I know I'll have to make because it's in the setback area, so I know I'm going to have to put a fire wall in the back. And the sanitation fees are pretty stiff with bad boy fees.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Delaney Labar?
I pass. I did owe him.
All right, I don't have any other speakers cards on this particular topic. Does anybody want to speak? Dale?
Sorry, I keep jumping up. On the application that the applicants fill out, it's really important that they know that these are not for vacation rentals. The whole idea of this program was to meet the RANA numbers for the state. And I noticed that when Barry Betlock was here, he was very upset because no one told him that. It wasn't on the application. So he thought he could do whatever he wanted, and that's really not the case. And so the applicants that do come forward for the second unit compliance program need to know that it's not for vacation rentals. It's for low-income and affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Anyone else? All right, I'll bring it back to council for further discussion.
I have none. I'd like to close this issue out so we can take action on number 6, agenda 6.
Okay. Anything else you need?
No, I think I have sufficient direction. So-
I just have one last a quick thing, though. If we are going to notice anyone, can we notice it in the manner that that you'd like to be notified in?
Soft touch.
Does that make sense?
Yes, got the message.
So just to clarify the direction, we are directing staff to include this non-compliance second unit program to the PL zones.
Right.
Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes, so
Okay,
we'll
great.
bring a resolution back along those lines.
Right.
Great.
Actually adding the PL zone will add a further action by the council, require further action by the council.
Okay.
All right. Item number 6, request to waive public art requirement for 409 Fox Street.
I have a quick motion. I'd like to move to refer this to the Arts Commission for recommendation.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapp?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. I'm going to skip over item number 7 and move on to item number 8, which is a county planning application, PL 13-0158, an application by Miranda Petroleum to drill 3 new wells, redrill 1 well, and related activities to the Upper Ojai. I want to, before we get this started, I want to inform the public as well as the people in attendance that I wasn't sure whether we were going to be able to get to this item tonight, so as such, I spoke with Supervisor Bennett this afternoon. And Supervisor Bennett indicated to me that he's going to take a much more proactive role in investigating the issue of the map that we're going to be discussing, and told me to inform everyone that if we didn't finish our discussions tonight, that there would be more information available to us if we wanted to continue this item for 2 weeks to our next agenda. However, we're right under the gun, so we're going to start it here. And I'm just passing that on in the event that after we've taken public input and discussed it, that if we do decide we want to continue the matter, Supervisor Bennett would not be disappointed with us if we did that. All right, Mr. Clark.
So this came to our attention right before the agenda went out. It has to do with county planning application PL 13-0158, which is an application by Murata Petroleum to drill 3 new wells in the Upper Ojai and re-drill 1 well in related activities. An organization called CFROG, which has been it's a citizens group that's been monitoring oil drilling activities, raised concerns about how this was processed, and has asked that the city council weigh in and asked that they be reprocessed in a way that the city can have input. So we have not done any independent analysis of this. We haven't had time, but you have received communications from CFROG and from county planning that provide some background to the matter. And the city attorney has also provided a resolution that you could use or modify and use to make a request to the planning commission that they continue it for that purpose. Currently, the public hearing is set before the county planning commission on February 18th at 8:30 a.m. So I don't know if I can answer any questions, but you can try asking me if you have any.
Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I could add one more point.
Yes.
The resolution that was added to your dais tonight, and I apologize for adding it to your dais tonight and not with the packet. This came to our attention so late that we had to rush to get something. The resolution is just a simple the city asked for continuance. It doesn't provide much in the way of reason other than we need more time to look at this. This community needs more time. Because as Mr. Clark noted, we haven't had time to really look at the project, which is the point.
And that may be the case after our deliberation here. Does anybody have any questions or comments before I take public comment? No? Okay. Alistair Coyne? Hi, Alistair.
Hi there. Thank you for taking this issue on at a late time. I'm a resident of the Upper Valley, and I've been supportive of the efforts of CFROG and others to monitor the oil and gas industry in the Upper Valley. For a long time, the environmental community wasn't paying attention to oil activities, and with recent issues started with the fracking controversy, they certainly are paying more attention now. However, it's very difficult for the environmental groups to make much difference in what happens with county planning, because county planning seems to approve everything that comes to them from the oil industry, maybe with some modifications. They have not turned anything down in the last few years. The comments from CFROG and others are generally ignored, and even the supervisors have a hard time getting their planning division to do the right thing and follow the letter of the law. One of the issues that's come up is that tanker trucks go up and down Königstein Road, which is a very narrow road, where it joins Highway 150 in the Upper Valley. It's quite tight. The trucks basically always turn left. They go towards Santa Paula, not towards Ojai. And a tanker truck coming out of Königstein Road is going to take 10 or 15 seconds to go from stopped to being completely out of the Ojai-bound lane and in the Santa Paula-bound lane. And there's curves there which make it hard to see a truck until you could almost be on it. The county's rationale, county planning's rationale is that, that is now safe for tanker trucks because there haven't been any accidents. Back about 15 years ago or so, supervisors said there shouldn't be any trucks on that road because it was not safe. So now they're saying because there hasn't been an accident, it's safe. That's kind of a bit strange. What's more, there seems to be a kind of the sort of thing we see more at the higher level of government in Washington. There's kind of a revolving door between industry and county planning. The head of county planning that deals with industrial issues like oil and gas is named Brian Baca. He's a former Union Oil executive himself. Doesn't tend to make things difficult for the oil industry to get what they want. So I very much support your efforts to request the Planning Commission to delay this hearing and for the city to have more time to give input, and request for supplemental EIR be recirculated for your review. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alistair. I also want to point out that Helen Connolly, who's very active in Seafrog, is here. So welcome, Helen. It's nice to see you. Judy Murphy? Is Judy still here? Oh, there you are. You switched seats.
Hi, Judy Murphy, live in Ojai. And I'm here tonight representing the Ojai Valley Democratic Club. We support Seafrog's request for a delay, and we feel that that planning commission should give our council time to allow for you to review and comment on this proposal. These wells affect the citizens of Ojai, our air, our water, our traffic, so don't forfeit your chance to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Rain Perry?
Hi, I'm a member of the Board of Seafrog, and I live in the Upper Ojai Valley. I just want to register my support of your right and responsibility to weigh in and urge you to pass this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Rain. John Brooks?
Everybody's being so short, I don't want to go long.
Hey, you have 3 minutes.
I'll take her time.
Yeah.
I'm John Brooks. I live in Oakview, but I've lived in Ojai before, and I breathe the same air and drink the same water and drive the same roads that all you wonderful Ojai residents do. Seafrog thanks you for placing this matter on the agenda and hearing it tonight so that a major mistake can be corrected in the way that oil and gas projects are reviewed by the city of Ojai. I don't believe you usually do that. However, due process is a cornerstone of the law. And as the law now stands, you have a right to have a review to these projects. It all began when Ventura County Planning created a map that they used erroneously to show that the Murata Petroleum application for several new and old wells was not in the Ojai Valley Area Plan. It actually was. And at that moment, when they did that and circulated the draft EIR to Santa Paula for review and comment, the Ojai City Council and all these residents were cut out of the CEQA mandated review. So this is a denial of due process. Seafrog believes that the planning document greatly underestimates the air pollution from the wells, and if approved, as Alistair mentioned, it would increase the risk to Ojai drivers who might crash into those large oil tankers if they're legally permitted to block the highway intersection at 150 and Koenigstein Road. Now, if the proposal had been sent to you as it should have been, you might have been able to comment on the planning staff's decision that the dangerous and inherently risky lane blocking tanker maneuver that was banned by the Board of Supervisors back in 1983 is now, in its opinion, no longer dangerous. In part, they say, as Alistair mentioned, because no accidents have taken place in the years that this oil company has been improperly using the large tankers there. The city of Ojai needs to look into it. It exposes your residents to danger. And then there's the whole air pollution problem. The Ojai Valley, as you well know, suffers from the second worst air quality in Ventura County. We're a non-attainment area. We do not meet the federal and state air quality standards, and Ventura County frequently exceeds the state ozone standard and is designated a severe ozone non-attainment area. Now, because of this, Ojai negotiated for more stringent standards in the Ojai Valley Area Plan. And the plan, as adopted now, has a much lower pollution threshold that triggers CEQA review. The Ojai Valley threshold of significance criteria was never addressed in the prior environmental impact reports. Therefore, this constitutes new information that will have a significant environmental effect. So as you've seen in our documents, I apologize for submitting so many to you, this project would emit more than 5 pounds of reactive organic compounds, ROC, per day, according to the APCD. Now, when the air pollution emissions from a proposed new oil drilling project exceeds that level of significance, it requires the county to include you in the environmental review of the project. Instead, the county first approved the project with an erroneous map that showed it was outside the Ojai Valley Area Plan boundary. Now, it is rushing for a reapproval without allowing for a review as required by the Ojai Valley Area Plan. Ojai deserves fairness and the same treatment as Santa Paula. We urge you to send the county that resolution requesting that it postpone the presently set hearing before the Ventura County Planning Commission to allow simply for Ojai's review of this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have a question?
sir? John, is it John?
Yeah.
John, I thought are there two issues here? One is the 5 pound, and then two is what's an existing well versus the 3 new wells they want to do? Or am I reading into that wrong?
They want to do 3 new wells, re-drill another, and continue operating 2 others on the project.
So if they put in 3 new wells, that doesn't require any IR or a CEQA review?
Oh, it does, but it didn't trigger, the county said it didn't trigger the lower threshold. The APCD says an existing, a well, once you put it in, it produces 2 pounds of ROC per year. Each well, 2 pounds.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, per day.
Right.
I misspoke. So at that point, if you do the math, which is pretty easy for me to do on that one, 2, 4, 6 is higher than 5. It's actually 2, 4, 6, 8 with the re-drilled well, and I suppose you could add the other 4 more pounds in from the existing wells. So obviously, in our view, you've reached the CEQA threshold. So it has to be referred to the CEQA agency, which in this case, given the Ojai Valley Area Plan, is yours, which has the 5 pounds per day limit, which triggers your review. You have not done that review. I think you deserve to have it. The law calls for it. Let's have it. Take a look at it.
All right. Thank you, John. Leonard Clave?
Good evening, Leonard Clay, 412 North Fulton Street. How much reliance can be placed on an environmental impact report when the people who prepared the report didn't know where the project was located? Monumental. I mean, how can that be trustworthy? I do not live in the Upper Ojai. I am not a member of CFROG, although I'm on their mailing list, and I've been following this. And that's relevant because the whole idea of the Ojai Valley Area Plan, is that the right? Is that what happens outside the city affects the people who live in the city. If we have this OVAP and it gives us certain rights, we have to exercise them or it's meaningless. I mean, I don't understand how the county thinks it's okay to proceed on something which we should have had the right to comment on and didn't because of their stupidity. And they say, well, it's too bad, but you know, we're going to move this along without your input. How a resolution short of demanding that they respect our rights would be inappropriate. Thank you.
Yeah, at least give us the right to comment and then ignore it. Julie Tulamite? She gone? Delaney Labar?
We might get a couple votes.
Hi, Delaney.
Hi, group. I was thinking about bringing a sleeping bag tonight, you know, because I knew it was going to be a long night. I'm really glad you got to number 8, so it wasn't all in vain. The county has been rubber stamping oil drilling for far too long in this county, and I find it highly suspect that the Murata Petroleum wells were accidentally left off the map, which for the Ojai Area Plan, which would have triggered a greater environmental review. Since the mistake was uncovered by the good work of the Citizens for Responsible Oil and Gas, the county's been backpedaling like crazy. Oh, gee, I'm sorry, we'll refund your appeal money. You know, what can we do except for maybe delay the hearing? The airshed pollution does not respect boundaries. The city of Ojai has been discouraging building development. We've been working to reduce traffic. We defeated Weldon Canyon Dump, all to retard air pollution. So this is big. I mean, you know, it comes here. This is our air. It is your right under the Ojai Valley Area Plan to adopt a resolution to require this
review, please exercise that right and request the Ventura County Planning Commission to postpone the February 18th meeting in order to ascertain the environmental impact of drilling 3 new wells, re-drilling a 4th, renewing 2 more, and the pollution load that we can expect from this. Please use your rights.
Thank you, Delaney. I don't have any more speakers cards. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Yeah, come forward. Deborah? Or Helen?
Helen Conley, member of the Board of Seafrog, resident of Oakview. Thank you very much, council members. What I'd just like to say is that the county has a process whereby they hear oil and gas issues at the administrative level. They have never had these issues rise to the level of an elected body until recently. We didn't know this when we started this process. We were unaware of this. And so now these issues are coming before the Planning Commission. This will be the 3rd time, I believe, that an oil and gas issue has come to them. The thing that you need to understand is that the Planning Commission takes their direction from the staff. The staff is the group that has submitted the report, which was partially erroneous. So it's a bit of a feedback loop on that. And yes, they never pay any attention to us. And I would just ask you all that we're 3 for 0 on this. We found 3 egregious errors in every project that we've looked into. But if they do proceed, which they probably will, that we all show up there, including your city manager, on the 18th at 8:30 a.m. to let them know that this is not okay. And if they still go ahead, which the Planning Commission, as far as we know, has been pretty much of a rubber stamp when we've been in front of them for any of these issues, that we then look at the next level of possibly suing them. Thank you.
Okay. Helen? Helen? I just have a question for you. As far as Seafrog is concerned, would it be better for this council to take action as proposed tonight, or would it be better for us to gather more information, be able to get more information from Supervisor Bennett, put it on continue this to our next agenda item to decide what we should do?
I was thinking about that because the hearing is scheduled for the 18th. And as you probably, maybe you haven't had time to look at the last email communication from Kim Prilhart at the county, they're backpedaling and denying the fact that they shouldn't be moving ahead. In fact, what we understand is that Mr. Brian Baca, who is the commercial director there, has stated that he'll be retiring very soon. And I can certainly see him talking to his superiors at the county and them saying, God, clean this up before you leave. Therefore, they are moving this as quickly as they possibly can. That would be my opinion on it, strictly an opinion. But I suggest that you pass a resolution if you so want tonight, but be prepared to be there on the 18th at 8:30 a.m. with and get all the people up here who are concerned about this issue to be there. And you also have in hand a report from one of our experts who's an advisor, Dr. Steve Colomé, on the actual composition of the pollution that you guys will have to endure if this project goes through. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Did you have a comment?
No.
Oh,
I'm ready to make a motion.
Was there any other speakers? Deborah? Okay. Oh, okay.
I'll be short. Hi, my name is Todd Schumann. I'm on the Seafrog board as well. I don't live in Ojai. I come up here a lot. I live in Camarillo. But I just wanted to, again, I'm glad Helen brought your attention to the report by Steve Colomé. He's a doctor. He's taught at UCLA, UC. He knows this stuff. He's consulted Air Quality Control Board, so he's looked at this closely. I just want, when you look at that, I just want you to remember one thing about this. The county is making an argument that you don't have review authority and that the emissions from this project are outside, are not even to be incorporated in the review. They're asserting some ministerial authority. It's a little complicated, but they are basing their argument on a guideline or a 2003 report by the Air Quality Control District that is advisory. And they are saying that trumps legal conditional use permit requirements that require this, that we believe require this project to go under CEQA review and find conformity with the general plan and the Ojai Valley area plan. So think about that when you look at that again. They're using an advisory document to trump your legal rights and to exempt them from finding conformity with general plan and CEQA review. So
What was Santa Paula's comment? They didn't comment, okay. Deborah, thank you. Deborah?
Thank you. I am representing the Board of Directors of the Ojai Valley Green Coalition. They certainly applaud CFROG uncovering this error, and we are very appreciative of their due diligence over the months, and I guess we're going into years here. And let's go back to the public comment, government transparency, citizen participation, oil, air, water, don't care about our jurisdictions. We should have say in it. We should have the opportunity to know all the facts. It's feeling a little bit like a David and Goliath situation with the county on this one for a long time, and the Green Coalition is in support and will certainly plan to be there on February 18th as part of this, the Ojai Valley community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak? Now I'll bring it back to council.
I'm going to make this real short and sweet. I'm going to, and it's just the first step in the process, but I'm going to make a motion that we adopt resolution of the City Council of the City of Ojai requesting that the Ventura County Planning Commission continue its hearing of a proposed conditional use permit amendment for the Ventura County Planning Application PL 13-0158 by Murata Petroleum, et cetera. I think we just need to pass as a first step, just pass this thing.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapp?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. As far as item number 7, that's going to move on to our next agenda item, please. Our next agenda at our next meeting.
Yeah.
We are going to adjourn briefly as the Ojai City Council. We're going to reconvene as the Ojai Redevelopment Successor Agency. I'll have a motion on the consent calendar.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapp?
Yes.
Haney?
Yes.
Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Blatz?
Yes. Okay, we're going to adjourn as the Ojai Redevelopment Successor Agency, reconvene as the Ojai City Council. Oral reports from the city manager.
I just wanted to note that we have noticed the Libby Bowl meeting next week as a city council meeting in the event that the majority of the council wants to attend.
Hold on, Mr. Clark. Could you keep it down? We're still in session. Go ahead.
I was just saying, we have noticed the Libby Bowl workshop as a city council meeting next week in the event that the majority of the city council wants to attend.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else?
one more point on that one, if I could jump in here.
Sir.
I attend all the council meetings. It has been brought to my attention that that may not be a meeting for which you would need my attendance. If so, I'm available to attend that workshop. If you would not like me to attend it, please so state.
Any thoughts?
I think you're here enough.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
my
if you
antici-
really want to come for
Yeah.
your own education,
My
join us.
my anticipation is that it's probably, your presence probably isn't needed as city attorney.
That works. I'll spend the retainer hours on another
Question.
project.
Uh-huh.
I have a question. Where are we on the PL zoning thing? Are you guys coming back? Are you
Yeah.
Yeah,
coming back
it requires a resolution, so we'll
okay,
have to
so
draft a
we
resolution.
should be at the
to bring
next
back.
meeting and then we'll know what's
We'll
happening?
not be at the next meeting. We don't have enough time to do that, so we'll let you know.
But we're going
Okay.
to have a resolution accepting the non-conforming. That's going to be before us.
Probably
Okay.
probably
in
the 1st
PL.
of February.
It's
So I
coming.
don't have to look forward to a golf course?
No.
Okay.
Or a park. Or
Mr. Summers, any reports?
The only other report is that we are monitoring, as I noted, the marijuana legislation. If anything comes up from the state, we'll keep the city informed. And over the next couple of months, should be seeing some reports, both to staff and to the council, on our annual process to provide reports on the new legislation adopted last year, effective January 1st. We try to prioritize the bills that actually matter and get them out on a sensible basis. So look for those. And if you have any questions on any bill you hear about, always give me a call.
Okay, thank you. Chief? Okay.
Say something? Just a question.
Okay.
Real quick. Very good. Thank you all. Steve Quillisi, West Eucalyptus Street in the city. I was not able to get the city calendar off the website in time to ask this question during item 3, but there was discussion of a Libby Bowl workshop. The only, on January 19th, I believe. The only thing on the city calendar for January 19th is street sweeping. So if you could tell me at what time that workshop is and where, I'd very much appreciate it.
Yeah, it's at 6 o'clock here.
In
on-
this room?
This room.
Very good.
And
Thank you.
it should be on the calendar, so we'll get that taken care of.
check it.
And it's after the street sweeping.
After the.
After that.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Okay. We're now going to go into closed session. Do we expect any announcement?
I do not expect a reporting out on tonight's closed sessions.
Okay, not expecting a report. We're in closed session.